friends. This is the Be Real Babe podcast, a place where your average babes come together to talk about life stresses, messes, and successes. A place where being yourself is the ultimate goal, where your opinion, your story, and your individual experience matters. Join me, your host B, and my guests for real and raw talks every week, laying it all out there so we can all help each other learn more, grow deeper, and evolve collectively. Now keep in mind, as a disclaimer, no one here is an expert and no one is giving any advice. This is strictly our opinions, thoughts, feelings, and for entertainment purposes only. Now with that being said, it's time. So grab your drink, grab your joint, and let's jump right in. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Be Real Babe podcast. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for stopping by the show today. I hope that you have a good time. And if you're a returning listener, watcher, supporter, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for coming back time and time again. For those that don't know me, my name is Brandy. I'm the host of the show, and today you guys were on episode 195, Being Real with the RKH. You guys, I am so excited Raminder is back on the show. This is an amazing 2-hour episode where I pick her brain about everything, and I honestly probably could have talked to her for another 7 hours, but in all fairness, busy girl. So I'm just so grateful. You guys are going to love this episode, but before we get to that, I just want to remind you, if you are watching on YouTube or Rumble, make sure to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and if you can, comment for engagement. Helps me out so much. If you are listening on Apple and Spotify, you can also turn on notifications and leave me a review if you're feeling like you want to live a little love. We'll leave you some time right now to do it. Okay, going to do it right now. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys. And if you want to find me on social media, you can find me on TikTok, Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram at the Be Real Babe or the Be Real Babe podcast. Again, you guys, thank you so much for the support over the last 8 seasons. I cannot believe I'm seeing season 8, and we're already well a month into season 8. This is absolutely insane. So just as always, guys, appreciate your love, support all the time. And if you have a story, you have something you want me to talk about, anything at all, make sure to reach out to me because I absolutely love to have new guests. I love talking to you. Your story matters, and I just love getting into it with everybody. Not getting into it, but jumping in and learning all of your experiences. So please always reach out if you have a story, or if you know someone that would be great on the show and you want me to reach out to them, please do. I love it. I need to step out of my comfort zone all the time. So please make me uncomfortable by asking someone that is definitely out of my league. Just kidding. But anyways, guys, really amazing episode. So let's get right to it. All right, babes, it's time to get on to the show. And with me today, I have a very special guest joining me for her second time. I'd like to welcome Raminder, aka the RKH, back to the show. Hey, babe, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
I'm excited to be back. I'm
It's a
honored.
perfect time. We talked about September 13th, Friday the 13th, and I kept my Hogwarts shirt for you. I have 2 of them,
Oh
and I
my
was like,
God.
I have to save my Hogwarts shirt for her because I know she appreciates it so much, and that's something you love.
Yeah, I was wearing mine yesterday.
See, there you go. Perfect. I was
I'm
like,
wearing my
I was
pink
looking.
sweatshirt now. Yeah, I got this last week.
Perfect. Oh, that's so cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I was just like, I know you're just as much of a Hogwarts fan as I am. And I know if you're like me, I kind of try to plan my outfits out so I'm not duplicating. And I was like, Hogwarts, Raminder, I have to save that one for her. But anyways, enough about
Pending.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So before we get on to the show, talking a little bit more about all the services and all the offerings that you have, human design,
Yeah.
life purpose. We have had you on the show before, season 4, episode 88, guys. And that was actually 2 years ago to the
Was it
month,
two?
October
Okay, I was
21st.
wondering. I was
Yeah.
like, what day was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. October
Or what
21st,
year?
2022. Yeah. I was like, oh
Wow.
my gosh, 2 years. So that's crazy. So before, and let's just pretend that you never came on before. So if you can just give the audience and listeners just a little bit about yourself before we jump into the goods.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be back, and we're going to have a lot more to talk about now that's shifted in my life since the last time I was on. Like 2 years is in quantum time a lot longer. So for me, I'm like that was 10 years ago. So for those that don't know me, my name is Raminder. I am a psychic healer. I am a lawyer as well, though I don't practice anymore at this particular moment. And I am a starseed, twin flame, divine feminine, whatever we want to. I don't want to say whatever we want to call it. I actually am a divine feminine from a twin flame dynamic, and so if that resonates for some people, but yeah, this is something that we're going to dive into, I think, a little bit today when it comes to my purpose and that transition that I made and why and how, all the good things. But I stopped practicing 2 years ago in May. So now it's been about 2.5 years. Um, yeah, big shift for me, but very aligned, guided, and a huge part of my purpose.
Totally. And that's just when we actually started following you was just before. It's just at the end of your kind of like chapter
Yeah.
of being a lawyer and we kind of just watched you and so it's been so and it was just also like I said in the last episode too that you've always just been a source of reason for us like just kind of calming everyone down and we just really appreciate you and that's why we wanted to have you on the first time too because
Oh,
and I'm not gonna lie there's some things you say I'm like oh I have to reflect on this like this is bringing up stuff which I think you guys know and appreciate but I don't come and attack you I think those people are crap but I'm like okay she said something I need to revisit here. Go sit in the corner and think about that. And
yeah,
just
yeah.
kidding.
I think you said
In
that
all
last
the loving
episode
ways.
too.
Yeah. And it's all good ways. And that's why I appreciate you guys because it's like, I think those triggers are good. You should be looking at like, okay, what did that, what's that bringing up actually, And I think as long as you
Yeah,
don't project on everybody, then you're okay to do that. But one
yeah.
thing too, since you've been on, you published a book. Is that correct?
I did publish a book. Well, yeah, I ended up self-publishing earlier this year.
So cool.
It was something I was, well, a book is something I've been wanting to write for a long time. And I think being like an intellectual or whatever you want to call it, like reading and writing is such a huge part of who I am and how I got to where I am and how, of course, I love expressing on my platform for those that are familiar. Um, and then it came to the time of actually writing it. And I didn't want to go through the hoops of getting a publisher, especially for a book that might be really controversial with like the things I'm
Mm,
talking about and having mainstream publishing. And so I just decided, well, I don't need that. And yeah, so April is when I got my first couple of boxes of my books, and it's on Amazon, it's on Kindle, and I want to record the audio version myself. I've pondered having
mm.
somebody read the audio, and I keep hearing like, no, you got to do it yourself. It's like, okay, so
You
that's
have
another
a voice for
project.
it too. You do have a voice for it. Like you do have that soothing voice. And I think, yeah, like everyone else for sure. And I
Oh,
get
that's
it if you had to
nice.
outsource that. But I do like
Yeah.
even listening today, I was listening to your podcast before we jumped on just your latest series. And even just at work while I'm stressed out in Excel, just even like maybe I wasn't fully listening, but I was like, she just has such a calming voice. So I definitely think
The
that's a great
podcast about
project to
narcissism is soothing you. I love
yes,
that.
yes. Well, it's just your voice, like, and you're not like you weren't reactive. You're just like speaking fact. You know what I mean? Where I'm just super
Yeah.
hyper and I'm all different levels and I don't even know, but you're just like, you don't get as like, I don't know. I was just like, this is so calming. Everything she's saying, she's not saying it like with anger or
Yeah.
like hatred. It was just or you're
I'm
good
no
at
longer
masking
in
it
a
and
react.
pretending and
Yeah. No,
acting,
I'm
one
no
of the two.
longer in a
Yeah.
reactive state, right? Like I'm opening up about
Very
my
fair.
journey after a long time of
Totally.
having processed it, even though it's all like new to everybody watching it. So yeah, it's I'm glad that you find my voice soothing. So it gives me more reassurance that I
I
can read my own
do.
book.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. And like for me, I'm terrible at reading. I used to be really good at it. And I think like what we do now on our phones got us away from it. But yeah, for me, I love when there's
Oh,
an audio
totally.
and I can do the both. I can read it and listen at the same time because then I get like the full experience. So yeah, girl, if you
Yeah.
did that. But I just think it's so beautiful. It's something that you wanted to do. And even though there might have been roadblocks for you, you pushed past those and found a way to do it
Yeah.
yourself independently. And I think that's just such
Hmm.
your vibe that it just like it kind of fits in tune with you. So I love that. And man, Amazon still made like, that's still huge. Everyone can access that. So that's really cool to see you be able to have a dream and bring it into real life. So that's amazing. And to your point, like I think it's beautiful that you healed and then now you feel like you can come out and talk about it. I think a lot of like people that are very real and raw on social media feel like they have to say it immediately or they owe their listeners or people right
Right.
then what they're going through. And I just don't think that's true. I think you guys, everyone deserves time to heal and share it when and if they're ever ready to. So totally love
Definitely.
that you're honoring that, but also that you feel strong enough to talk about it or start to
Oh,
anyways.
thanks. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So diving into, so we met just before you were transitioning from lawyer, and I know you were helping people and healing people on the side, right? That wasn't something that just was like lawyer to
Yeah.
healer. It was like intertwined in your life for quite a long time, right?
Starting
Like
from
from
the
day
end of
one, pretty much.
2019. Yeah, like I know oh sorry, no, this wasn't a question from you. This was a question for my Q&A, which was like what was the catalyst and like when did you realize you were awakening? I mean, it was
Mhm.
happening and surfacing a lot sooner or like sorry, a lot longer than when I became consciously aware. I became consciously aware before I met my twin. That was like the real activation. And the reason why that catalyst happens for light workers that are in that collective is to heal the planet through this sort of energy of like healing yourself and disassociating from the matrix, like whether or not you're actually with that person. I'm not. And so, you know, the
Mhm.
catalyst and what it's meant to bring for you is a level of ascension. And so that happened in 2019, but my awakening process had already started years prior. And then that year in 2019, I had met my current coach, and another reader that I'd seen a couple of times. And I was just consistently being told, like, you need to use these gifts. And I was like, I don't have gifts. Like, what are you
Isn't that so
smoking?
typical? Like,
Right?
I'm not
Like,
special.
what are
What are
you?
you talking about? And
I'm
we're
not
like,
special.
"Ah,
I'm not chosen. What are you smoking? And
you're on the
then
wrong kind of
it
drugs. We need to get you some Molly or ecstasy." So you're like, oh, I'm
was
so amazing.
no, no, and then you know, I just started to shift more when I realized what my catalyst was, which was through like a random universe dropped a YouTube video on my algorithm, and it was like, watch this, and I was like, oh my god, there's like a people, like a sector of the planet that are feeling the way I'm feeling. I thought I was crazy. And so because the
I
one
mean, no,
way
I'm just
I,
kidding.
yeah, I'm a little crazy, but the one way I explained when I met my twin was, it always makes me emotional to talk about, but it was like I'd never met myself before, right? And
Hmm,
so that was like a
wow. Yep.
crazy feeling to like meet myself in another person. And that was the catalyst of like me realizing, okay, there's more to life, there's more to feeling, there's more to this
Mhm.
ascension, right? And so that was when I
Yep.
started to really soul search into my healing work and capabilities and my feelings and opening up my gifts. And then at the end of 2019 is when I started to publicly offer them. I was really scared to, and I think
Interesting.
that was not,
Yeah,
I think that it was more of like my fear of being perceived. At that point,
mhm,
I didn't know how people would
totally.
look at me for coming out as someone woo woo, like in this matrix.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
my friends were like, and like, what is like, we already know you're highly intuitive and empathetic. And, you know, like I've been doing it for
yeah.
years informally, but at the end of 2019 is
Mhm.
when I started moonlighting in it. And then
Love that.
really focusing on it was probably when I shifted practice, but I was still doing it. And, you know, while I was practicing and doing certain
Mm,
readings at odd times or only taking weekend clients. And then that was like what started to shift me out, because I'm like, wow, I'm working my billable like hour job, and then I'm coming home, and then I'm doing this, and
and
I'm
media.
an activist. And I was just like, I have no time for myself. Like, you know, I was single, I was living downtown doing my thing, and I'm just like living on burnout. And then I realized,
Yes. Yeah, it's
this is
like
not
addiction too sometimes.
it is addictive.
You're
It
just
is
like, "Oh, gotta
addictive
keep
because you're like,
going.
oh,
Gotta keep
yeah.
going.
I'm like,
Gotta keep going." How do you not?
how productive can I be today? How productive can I be today? I'm like, dude, like
Mhm.
working like 5 to 10 is not a normal life, right? Like as in 5 a.m. to
No,
10 p.m.
no. You need some sleep.
So
We need some
yeah, I
sleep
need some
sometimes.
sleep.
Like,
And
some
I think
food,
it was,
some
yeah, it
relaxing,
was
some movement.
more, totally, it was more just me studying it and trying to figure out what was going on, and then
Mhm. For
slowly
yourself too, right? Like
inching
trying to
for
figure out what that
myself.
means for yourself.
Like, is
Yeah.
this what I'm investing in? Am I good at this? Like, what?
Mhm.
And then I started to
It's
see,
a
yeah,
lot.
I got to choose a path. Got to choose a path. And then I stopped practicing in 2022, even though between 2021 and 2022, I was already shifting. I was doing contract work. I had
Mm.
started my own gig. Um, and then I was like, yeah, I can't deal with, unfortunately, working for small business. It was like,
Yeah.
it was very draining during that time because it was
Oh
all
my
about
gosh, I can
resources,
imagine.
and it was all about being against the government and them
Mhm.
having unlimited resources. And I was like, crap, I was one of those people until I started my own firm. I was on the other
And
side.
I don't love this. I don't love this. I can
I
imagine
don't
too, right?
love
And at the
it.
same
Yeah.
time, there's the draining of the lawyer part and everything going on. At the same time, spiritual healing and helping people, especially when you're new at it, I imagine is draining as well, because you're learning how
Yeah.
to not take on everybody else. And like if someone, just like as like any coach, if someone quote unquote not fails, but for lack of a better word, maybe doesn't progress as they are, they're upset with it themselves. I know you guys want to see your clients, succeed and all that. So I know coaches take that
Oh,
on,
yeah.
and it takes time to separate like business from personal. And I imagine, especially in the spiritual, intuitive realm, where, there you just see a lot and a lot darker and deeper as a reflection to your own shit, because you probably are healing your stuff so that you can then help others. So it's like you're going, and that's how me and Kayla
Exactly.
felt with the podcast. We were talking about all of our like mental illness, or at the time where we thought were mental illnesses, all of the trauma, all the bad things, and we're like facing it to ourselves and then having to talk to each other, and we're like, oh, this is interesting. But man, the healing that came out of it, and now that stuff's just not triggering to us anymore, and it's just like, yeah, it's just facts that it was, right?
I
It's
love
so cool
that.
to see.
Transcension.
He's so nice. And honestly, I feel like, to your point, a lot of people had that kind of like start of their awakening, or like to understand that there's more connection, there's more to life than, like you said. And then the pandemic, I think, I also want to say, put like a grow light on everything, and just expanded everything a little bit, where people were looking into things more. They were understanding what like gaslighting was on a higher level. And so
Yeah.
I think everything was so emotionally charged at that time. I couldn't imagine being a lawyer and an advocate and a spiritual healer. Like, girly, I hope that you didn't burn out too hard. So I imagine that was probably like,
It-
okay, let's walk away
yeah.
from law and let's jump in. And you help people
Yeah.
so much, like on the daily. And I'm not saying that you didn't do that
Thank
as a
you.
lawyer, but do
Thank
you
you.
feel like this is like 100% your life purpose, and jumping into this was like absolutely what you're meant to do?
Oh yeah, like this is definitely my purpose. And because when I was still, let's say, practicing in big law, I had these gifts unlocked. It was
Mm,
very clear to me that this the avenue that I was taking as a healer with having my educational background was like an immense privilege. I talked about this in the last
mm,
episode about farmers protest and how that really shifted my perspective about my gifts and my knowledge and my ability to advocate and my platform and like all of that.
power.
And that was a turning point really. And I was still in big law at that juncture of,
Mm,
and trying to manage both. Like
time.
I ended up getting fired from that job because it had been months where they were just like, get away from here. Like, there's all these things were interfering, like the partner lying, like a partner lying about me, and um, them making me do things I didn't want to do. Like I was still trying to function and manage, and because I was still working through a lot of wounding, I internalized it
Mm,
as of like, I'm not capable of
not
this,
good enough.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like trying to
Yeah.
prove something to myself. But when I look back at that time, it was like drained drained.
Yeah.
Like it was still great, and I think now if people looked at my energy, and then when we compare it in hindsight, we can see the difference in terms
Mhm.
of um how exhausted I was. But
Totally.
they had made it very clear to me, like, fulfill your purpose or come back.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah. Giving you
I
the sacrifice.
cannot do this
I'm not doing this shit
again.
again.
I ain't
I'm
doing this
not
shit
doing it.
again. I was like, I don't give a shit what my fucking twin does, because like
Yeah. Okay.
you're supposed to activate to like both live in purpose, not necessarily even together. But I was like, he can decide to graduate, but I'm gonna focus on me, because I was like kind of going through that shift at that time. And so
Makes
I did
sense.
end up focusing completely on me and what that catalyst was meant to bring and shift for me. And they're like, yeah, do you want to come back? Yeah, no. And I was like, I'm finally at that point of understanding all of the programming that I am deprogramming and working through and helping others heal through at a young age.
Yeah. You have
And
lots of time.
yeah, lots of time. And I'm like, well, shit, if I come back again, I'm going to be feeling like this when I'm 12 years old. Like, nope.
But I have seen some of those 12-year-olds like on Instagram. I'm like, this kid
Totally.
is like a
Yeah.
magician. Like, I don't know what's going on here. Am I tripping? Is
Yeah.
this AI? Like, this kid is
But the
so
benefit,
far for a
yeah,
12-year-old.
it blows my mind. And the thing is that they have
Totally.
conscious parents, but I'd probably have
Hmm.
to come back and have unconscious parents again, right?
Yeah.
Because
Help them figure it out.
not right. Yeah. The meaning is our lives will always, I explained this last episode too, it becomes a diluted version.
Mhm.
And so it's not like I would come back and necessarily have no ties to break. And I've like broken through a lot of these ties and soul contracts and the boundary setting and the toxicity and whatever intergenerational stuff. And so living in my purpose was deeply determined by whether or not I was going to choose a path, because I was just trying to live like this, and then eventually it diverted. And what that does to your vibration is it creates a lot of imbalance. You're not really
Yeah.
able to manifest
Inconsistency.
or yeah, get what you want in a consistent manner if you are
Mhm.
not continuously aligning with that timeline and frequency, and you're not allowing yourself to, if you are living on a detour as well. So I had to sit down and talk to
And
myself and say, yep.
listen, listen.
I know you
I think
spent
that's so
all this time,
all this
10 years,
time, all this
but
money and all this, but
all
it's
this
life, right?
money.
Though, and
Yeah.
yeah, but you wouldn't be who you were today without all of that either, right? And I think there's a part where you kind of
Yeah.
get to life where it's like good or bad. I'm not saying we want, but like you said, we have soul contracts, we have purposes to get here. And as you were saying that, I was kind of thinking, because I always like to think logically sometimes when it comes to this stuff. I work in Excel all day, but as I was thinking like soul contracts and having to relive them and lessons and stuff like that, it's kind of like when you balance at month end and you just like kind of have a problem that you can't balance and you just bring it over to the next month. I feel like that's
Yes.
kind of like
Yes.
with
Total
like your different times
reconciliation.
you're coming back.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, exactly. You're like, I'm just gonna leave this problem till next time because it's too fucking hard to figure out right now. But that's kind of how I
That's
imagine it. Like,
a
or
100%.
you come to it in that same you come to it in your same life with the same people. I'll be like, okay, listen, I've been in this fucking situation before, and then I'll reflect on what I could have done better the last time, and I'll notice what I've done better this time, especially with friendships. Like my friendship with Kayla, my best friend now, is so beautiful because I've self-reflected on my past relationships that didn't work out and was like, hey, this was where I could have done better. And when I went into this one, I'm like, I'm going to try really hard and I want to be really honest with you. And like, yeah, it was just really cool to see like those balances I had kept over and kept repeating the same fucking lesson with these people. And I was
Wow.
like, I'm breaking the cycle with you and I'm going to do this different. I'm going to be honest with you if you hurt my feelings and it's going to be gross and messy and awkward, but please just hold my
Uh,
hand through it. And now it's just like such a beautiful friendship. It's like, girl, guess what I did? I grew like when I could have punched her in the face, not actually, but like I just breathed and was like, what would B do? And she wouldn't. And so I'd walk away and it's just like now we're celebrating all the
oh, I
wins
love
together.
that.
And so that's kind of to me like how you lessons either you repeat them within your time frame or maybe it's over timelines, right? Is that fair to say?
Exactly. Yeah, it could be over timelines. And in our life, we end up having a lot of intergenerational stuff and wounding that shows up in various ways. So, issues we've had with our parents will manifest in our relationships, it'll manifest in our work life, it'll manifest possibly in our friendships, the boundaries we have. Well, it swims through. I say energy is a timeline. It's not going to usually stay in one area of your life. And what I find interesting is that having boundaries with friends is actually harder than having boundaries in relationships, right? Like
Yeah,
we're
I don't
vulnerable
know what
with our
that
friends.
is.
I think we just have
Yeah.
an
Maybe it's
expectation
like
that our
the group
partner is going to listen to
sisterhood.
us, right? Yeah,
You're
like
stuck,
we're
fucker.
like, yeah, you're stuck in this and like you're pissing me off, right? Like
Yeah,
whether or not they
totally.
listen to the
Yes.
boundary is up for debate.
Another discussion.
But yeah, another
Yes.
discussion. But the I think it's more that people pleasing that comes with the friendship where we
Mhm.
expect them to understand us more
Mhm.
transparently, authentically. But we have a
Yeah.
lot of wounding that shows up and a lot of people pleasing that shows up. So I'm so glad you have that with Kayla, and she's awesome, right? So it's like having
Oh,
that vibe and having that
it's
growth and having the empathy between one another is the best.
yeah. And we got engaged a month apart, so we're going through bride era together. And so like past us probably like and I can't speak for her, but past me would have been like more jealous and like it would now we're just like my main color is her accent color and her main
Oh
color
my
wants to be my
God.
accent color and we're sharing
Congrats.
Pinterest and Excels. Thank you. And it's just like but before and what has been beautiful is that I've had past friendships resurface and really show me the contrast of what I used to accept in the past and what I have with Kayla now and I always make
Yeah,
sure that I reflect on those moments and be like, good for you, girl, for setting those boundaries. Even though it might have taken me longer to find Kayla, I still wasn't willing to, like, not that I knew, but I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like setting those boundaries maybe up
100%.
subconsciously, being like, I'm not going to accept this. And then I was with Kayla, like, I'm willing to take the leap with you, obviously, because we're doing the podcast and all that. And it's just been so great. And like I said, those lessons came back to be like, are you going to repeat these? And I was like, nope, you showed me that you're the same person that you've always been and that Kayla, like, I deserve this sisterhood. And I think the reason why it's harder is because we all crave that group, that sisterhood, like back to like even witches and covens, we're always like trying to be together. So I think it's harder to be critical of those relationships and say those things because you don't want to be booted out of the group kind of thing. That's kind of how
Yeah.
high school the
Yeah.
worst.
Yeah, like you want to be accepted, right? And I think
Yeah.
that a part of it's weird. Like I think a part of it is maybe in a relationship we expect to be accepted,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in a friendship
Mm-hmm.
we kind of take a back seat. I find it really hard to assert myself in friendship, to assert
Mm-hmm.
myself in
Yes.
having boundaries there. And I think that that is just another side of being an empath. But going
Mm-hmm.
from being like wounded in certain areas and then working through that and then being more empowered, it's like, no, I can stand up for myself. And a lot of empaths kind of get into that bullying loop, being bullied loop, right? Or passive
Yes,
aggressiveness.
absolutely.
And that's something that I saw a lot throughout my high school time. And then maybe even up to like 3 4 years ago, and that's when I really
Mhm.
started setting boundaries of like, I'm not going to be taken advantage of. I'm not.
Mm-mm.
And
I'm
I
not
think
gonna
that
feel
that is
bad
hard
about
for
my
us.
healing too. I'm sure you've
Yeah.
probably had that a lot too, right? Where you're just like, I
Oh
get it,
yeah.
and I don't expect you to heal like I'm healing, and everyone's got their different journey, and I respect that. At the same time, I'm not gonna tolerate this kind of behavior or anything like that, and that's just where I'm at right now. And if you want to work through that, amazing. But if you don't, like, there's a millions of people in the world, you know. Like I'm just one, and just one my opinion, and I just don't want any of that. Like I don't want people. I don't need people to be at a certain level of growth. I just want them to acknowledge that they are always going to be evolving and growing, and there's always lessons to be learned, right? Instead of just
And
being
some
like,
of it is,
fuck
yeah, sorry to
everybody.
interrupt you. Go on. Yeah.
No,
I was going to say some of
no,
it
no, no.
is like
I just mean, yeah, like
enabling.
that
Like, what do we want to
mentality.
enable? Right. What do, sorry, again,
Exactly.
what do we want to enable versus what are we, because, okay, our enabling ends up being a leak of energy.
Mm-hmm.
Allowing and enabling certain behaviors ends up kind of permeating, eventually permeating our own bubble. Not necessarily
Yeah.
what we accept, but it gets into our emotional space, it gets into our boundaries, it gets into our authenticity. And so with friendships, this kind of just coming to me, we're usually on different timelines, different wavelengths,
Yeah.
different levels of understanding, especially the longer you've been friends with somebody, right? Like you grow
Mm-hmm.
together or you grow apart. And
Yep.
I guess in a
Totally.
relationship, the difference is like we're on the same timeline, we have the same goals, we have the same values. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you
That's so
know that
important.
somebody necessarily doesn't necessarily have that, then you got to kind of see where you're leaking your energy. I saw
Mm-hmm.
a TikTok the other day and it was like, I don't have time for these bullshit friendships where like
Mm-hmm.
people don't stand up for themselves, or you're complaining
I
about
don't
the same
want
shit.
that.
I don't want
Tell
that,
me,
right?
tell
And I was
me,
like,
tell me if I've
crap.
hurt you. Like, tell me if I've upset you. Not like but know that I never do anything with ill intention. But if I've hurt you, like, please say something, please talk to me. We're adults. It's easy to be like, hey,
Yeah.
can we have a conversation? And if you're not, that's totally fine. But I would just like people in my close circle that we can have those conversations, right? That we can be like, hey, or even like, so much is miscommunication and us taking it the wrong way because our bullshit stories in our heads, right? So like someone doesn't
Yeah.
text you back, and then you see them post on their story and you're like, immediately, and maybe not, maybe I'm just one of the person, but sometimes in your low and you're just like,
No,
huh,
you're not the only
have time
person.
to post on your story, but at the end of the day you think, okay, hold the fuck on. You've had days where you don't want to reply and you just want to escape on, but you know what I mean? Like, a lot of it is the stupid stories we create in our heads, and I think that's why communications are so important, and that's why me and Kayla, I think, and it's trickled onto my other girlfriends now, have such open communication. Like, hey, are you doing okay? Are we good? And I'll just do that sometimes, like, hey, just checking in. We good? Yeah, okay, good, cool. That
Yeah.
was all bullshit stories in my head that I made up, instead of putting that on the other person. When they do anything, did they say anything, or are you just making assumptions because you feel like shit about yourself, right? So I think self-love and
Yeah.
self-awareness, without that, there's a lot of like wounded like sisterhood, and then it goes to the attack. And I'm sure you've experienced that. I have, for sure, as I'm
Yeah.
growing up and learning and trying to be, a like you said, the best version of myself. And sometimes people don't like that, and that's whatever, that's a personal thing to them, I think.
Yep. That's a personal
And
preference.
life purpose. Yeah, personal preference. So we know what your life purpose is. Obviously, you found it. And so if someone, and I know that's a big part of what you do. So if someone was like, hey, what the fuck is life purpose? Like, okay, I personally get up every day. I work in cannabis and I play in Excel, and I absolutely love my job. I know people hate corporate, but I absolutely love my corporate job. I don't know if that's necessarily my life purpose. I think this is more something that's more along to my life purpose.
Yeah.
How would one figure one out, and what exactly is that?
Yeah. So purpose, I always explain as a way that we act. It's not a thing we do. It's not a destination. A part of your
Okay.
purpose is going to be this podcast. It's going to be your job. It's going to be being a wife. It's going to be being a friend, right? what gets people tripped up is wanting to identify their purpose as one thing, and that doesn't allow you to
Okay.
evolutionize, right? Like when you start to really hook your identity into this is what I do. Like for me, that was a huge thing I had to dismantle. Was like
Mhm.
my identity was wrapped up in being a lawyer and having these degrees and then wanting to be a judge and wanting to go to the Supreme Court of Canada. Like for me, that was like a huge aspiration, right? And of
Yeah.
course, a part of me still wants that, but I had to make a decision of, well, I can't give up my whole public platform to achieve those goals because it's more influential for me to have my platform. And so that was like
Mhm.
one of the main reasons I made that switch. And then deprogramming my identity that was based in law or based on being a lawyer, based on this title,
Yeah.
was something that took a long time because it was a passion of mine. It wasn't an ego thing. It was like deeply, and is, because I still talk about it. I still write, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
but that was how it showed up in my life. And for my clients, it's like, oh yeah, like I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a nurse. And it's like, sure, all those things are absolutely true. But what
Mhm.
informs your purpose is the way in which you are meant to act, which usually
Okay.
I do through human design. I love to read
Mhm.
individuals' human design, which is where their purpose is. And it shows us, it basically tells us how we are meant to act in order to fulfill our purpose. And a lot of that is reassurance about who you already are as an individual. It's already validating. People just need to hear that and be like, oh yeah, that is really natural for me. And some common ones are like fostering community or
Mhm.
finding, slices of heaven on earth to like ground yourself so you can bring your best energy. It could be allowing yourself to transform, right? Like they're really basic ways, but when you give yourself permission to do that, which is very difficult because it's so basic,
Yeah.
is your light expands, and then you give other people permission to live in their purpose and to be authentic,
I love
right?
that.
And so you figure out what your purpose is based on your incarnation cross and your human design.
Mm.
And then we talk about that in human design readings, as well as like, what are you really good at versus where are the ways that you kind of continuously sabotage or condition yourself along your life path. And some of these
Yeah.
things are, there's design and personality in human design. Design is our subconscious, personality is more conscious. So as we start to heal, we learn more about our design because we start dismantling our programming. So some people are like surprised to find things out, or like, oh yeah, this is how it shows up. Or
Makes sense.
personality is something we're consciously aware of. It's like our ego. And so once we see that these are ways we are like definitively hardwired, like the ways in which we're
Mhm.
meant to be, ways in which our personality shows up, um, or our life experiences show up, it makes sense as to why you are the way you are, or realizing life is fair because it's unfair to everybody. Like what is your
Mhm.
hardship in this life and how is it going to show up for you? And so people can find more purpose in that. And one thing that I empower individuals to learn is in our design, there are areas in our life where we're not fully activated. So we're not fully defined in our design. It's kind of like a hanging gate, it's called in design. So what you're meant to do in those scenarios is seek out or align or maintain people, mainly, that help activate the other side. But because we're in survival mode all the time, and because a lot of us live in ego, we want to be able to do it all ourselves. So
Ah,
really you get
yes.
taken away from purpose, right? Because you're not giving
Yeah.
somebody else the opportunity to help you and collaborate in your purpose. You're trying to
Mhm.
make something that doesn't fit work for you, right? It's like someone's going to be really
Yep.
good at writing code and somebody's going to be
Yep.
really good at doing the graphics. Like if you're really good at doing the graphics, you don't need to go and learn code in order to make your website. Like just go hire the person that's really good at code and use your strengths rather than burning yourself
Yeah.
out, right? Those are like practical ways that it can show up. Um, so seeing what you're really good at and what feels natural to you, because that is our divine
Mhm.
energy, that is usually our divine feminine, right? Our receptivity of,
Mhm.
how am I meant to act, how am I meant to be, what brings me flow, what's natural for me. And we've just been taught for centuries and decades and lifetimes that that is not adequate for success. Purpose is you
That's
achieving
money.
the certain goal. Money.
Yeah.
Money is your goal, right?
Status. Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
getting out of that matrix mindset of you need these golden handcuffs in order to be successful, right? And I
Thank
think, I guess
goodness.
I am like a living testament of that, in terms of like I had to make
Yeah.
this huge shift, and it hasn't been easy. And it, I took a big cut in my finances at the beginning, and like I had to completely restart. Like there was a huge transition that happened, but you kind of get
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
decide, do you want to live in like this perpetual glass ceiling, or do you want to have
Mhm.
a bunch of flow and opportunity? And you can mix both, right? And for
Mhm.
people, that's going to
Yeah.
be a huge part of their purpose and their trajectory. But a lot of individuals that have come to me are looking to find more meaning in how to use their design to inform their practices, shift what they're
Mhm.
doing, teach their children, make big changes in their career. And it's an evolving process. It's not, like I said, it's not a destination. And so people want to know, like, what's the end goal?
Yes.
Like there's no end goal. Ugh,
And
stop
things would
asking
change too
me.
as you ebb and flow. Well, they so would your chart change as you ebb
Exactly.
and flow? Like, so
Nope.
if I'm imagining it, so when you're saying there's like half gates, right? So when you're finding someone with the other one, then you can kind of complete that energy gate, and that's where it's like community and connection, doing stuff together. It'd be more powerful if the two came together versus you just having a half open kind of energy gate, just kind of doing it by yourself. Is that like a visual?
So human design readings are something that I only do once. It
Okay.
doesn't
Okay, cool.
change. How
Oh,
you relate to
perfect.
the
Okay.
information will change. So because it's like a
Hey,
natal
okay.
chart, right? It's like a natal chart.
Mhm.
You
Okay.
upload your birth time, your birth date, and it spits out your chart and design. I don't know which alien created this, but that's what it is. And so,
Is
like, I
it
don't
Satan in
ask me the
Scientology?
algorithm.
Just kidding.
Oh my,
Just
Tom
kidding.
Cruise. Yeah.
Scientology just keep coming up in my life lately. I'm like, why? Get away from me.
Oh no,
Just because
Scientology
I
is,
find you
yeah.
like insanely interesting, I don't want to be a part of you. Get out of here.
Yeah, I don't want to be in your cult. We don't do cults.
No, I
So
don't.
your
No, thank
design
you.
does, yeah, your design doesn't change. How you relate to it and utilize it does. But if somebody comes back to
Cool.
me in 2 years and wants me to redo their human design, it's going to be basically the same reading. You're just going to tell me how
I
you've
see.
utilized your energy differently.
I see.
So your
Okay,
birth
that
time and
makes
your birth
sense.
date doesn't change. So your
No,
design
that's
will
true.
remain fluid.
I
That's why like
compared
those
mine.
readings are more to who? Your husband?
No, I compared mine. Remember I said I did the time wrong? And you're like, "Oh, how much changed?" So I went back
Mm-hmm.
today and I went and
Mm-hmm.
compared for the 2 different times. And again, sorry, I don't know what they are, but like categories wise, 5 of them were different than what the original poll was. So I'm
Wow.
like, I'm so glad I called met my mom and was like, "Hey, what was actually my time of birth?" And she was like 7:15. I was like, "I thought it was 5:30." Okay, well, switch that. And then that's where I said like that's why I think it's so cool to look into this stuff, and I have like done your website stuff, but it's like I feel like the next step is going through that with you to fully understand. And as I was saying the other day, I pulled it again
Love
and it said
to.
was like not we're gonna do that, and not whether on here or just privately, but it was like not in theme was frustration. And what I've been feeling the last little bit, what I've been like what I contacted you about recently was that, and then I pulled it again and I was like, yep, yep, yep,
You're
that's
a
exactly
generator?
what. Yeah, I'm super yeah, I'm
Yeah.
a yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
generator, and we're the same line. I think it's called 5-1 because I was listening to you today and you're like a 5-1. I'm
Oh
like,
yeah, we're both
twins.
5-1 generators. Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Look at
Yeah, I
us
was like, I have to pull it.
go.
I was like, I have to pull it, and obviously want to pay you to dive into it, but it was just like it was so cool getting into it. And like I said to you, I kind of got overwhelmed with it, and I didn't want to attach myself to understanding something incorrectly and then just be misled. So that's why I love that we have individuals like yourself that offer these services to walk through. So is that like we pull the human design, we have a thing, and you just run through it with me and then give me guidance, or is that
Yeah.
something that can be like a continual thing?
Yeah, okay. So when people start to work with me, I like just doing the human design just because we get to
Mhm.
see, it's kind of like having the prerequisite to your energy, right?
Okay.
How
Yeah.
is energy going to be the most impactful for you, energy work and this healing? How is it going to, like, it's kind of like having a prognosis or a diagnosis of sorts, right? What are the steps we can go
Spiritual.
through to, yeah, to spiritually, to ensure
Yeah.
that your needs are met in a way that is in
Mm,
alignment? So
mm,
what I do in the human design readings is I'll share the screen of your chart, and I'll go through the right side, which shows your profile, your type, your authority, your purpose. Um, yeah, you're not self theme, you're self theme, right? And like seeing, okay,
mhm.
this is exactly what we're going to focus on in terms of like what helps you make decisions and how should you not be making decisions, what makes you burn out. And then we go to the other side of the chart, and I don't read all 64 gates, how many gates are there,
Yeah.
but I see, okay, what
It's a
that,
lot.
like, you could go on for a long time, and a lot of it's
Yeah.
repetitive, but
Yeah.
excuse me, a lot of design readers are not psychic intuitive.
Mm.
You can learn
Oh, okay.
everything about
Interesting.
design. You can like learn everything about
True.
design without being unlocked in those ways, right? Just like with astrology. But I guess to like what's beneficial is I can start to pick up on the areas of your life it shows up intuitively.
Hmm.
And so I
Just like an
choose the
added
gate.
layer.
Yeah, it's an added layer of like insight into your specific life, I guess. And so the universe, I guess, will nudge me to talk about specific ones. So I say, like, are your success codes, which are the ones that really help you. What gets in the way? I label it like GIW, what gets in the way. Where are you like
Yeah.
okay at, but like start to sabotage? And then where do you actually fully sabotage your life? And you may be already aware of that. Like I said, when you start to dismantle your design, you start to see where your sabotage is. So it's never super surprising. It more validates people on their experience as well as their tolerance in their own life.
Yeah.
And then we talk about like
Yeah.
where are you like where are you defined? So you have 9 centers in human design, similar to our chakras, but we have 7 chakras. So okay, where are you defined, which is like what's colored in, and where are you
Hmm.
susceptible, which is like the transparency where you're not defined, and how does that advantage or disadvantage you in your life? And so, like I said, it never changes. It's just, are we
Hmm.
using that information to the best of your ability? And so then after that, when I'm doing, it's not like it's a prerequisite to get coaching with me, but I like to do it just
No,
so
of
I
course.
know, like, hey, yeah, you're a
Yeah.
generator. So um,
Yeah.
these are the ways that it's showing up for you right now. And like the 5-1 is the heretic investigator, which is the rebellious
Mhm.
teacher. And so it's like,
Oui, oui.
well, you're going through this really shitty situation, but you are a 5-1, and so let's look at
Mhm.
that and like understand how that shows up for you and how you can utilize that for your purpose. And so then that helps me gauge, right? Like, okay,
Mhm.
you're feeling this way because you're frustrated because you're out of alignment, Brandy.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly,
why are
and
you
that we know
frustrated,
why.
right? Yeah.
Because I was trying
What?
to do something that I truly don't want to do, and the universe was like, "You don't actually wanna do this. Here's a reminder of why, and now you're gonna sit there pissed off about it because you know that you're just trying to rewrite an old story." Because, like, I think if you're a person that has like multi talents, and I'm not a person to like toot my own horn, but I'm one of those people that I just like to do shit, and so I teach myself, so I do a lot. And so I always
Exactly.
get people telling me I should do this. I'm sure you've had the same thing all the time, like, oh, you should do this. You're like, cool, thanks for suggesting that. I am a person, I need to fucking sleep. So I've always, when it comes
Yeah.
to certain things, people are like, do this, and I'm like, I love doing these things, but it's not something I want to do right now. And I kind of felt that way about this thing, but I was like, I'm going to give it a try. It's been a while. And then I was like immediately confronted with that. I was super frustrated, and I was like, why am I so frustrated about this? Why can't I let this go? And then, just like I said, a couple days before, I pulled my chart again, like, just to remember, just to get a refresher. And I was like, because I'm not being aligned, and I'm doing this because this is an old story, an old expectation I used to have on myself that I need to put to bed, and I need to face this and just get rid of it. And that's what we've talked about recently, right? So it was just super interesting. It made me kind of giggle and being like, yeah, because when I read that before, I would get it, but I don't know I got it as much as like it really just showed me that line up there, right? So I just think it's like the neatest thing ever. But like I said, it's kind of can be overwhelming. So I think it's really great that we can come talk to people, and over time, I think it's always good to just check in too, like revisit that. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's like today, actually, and today I had a appointment with a naturopath with Dr. Bean in Salmon Arm, and I did a Dutch test. And it kind of reminds me, the human design test kind of reminds me of the Dutch test, but it's just like different ways of you guys to take the
Exactly.
information that you know, and then someone's individual uniqueness, and kind of reflect it to them, and then start working with them around the important areas that you need to due to the results of this test design kind of thing.
Yeah, it's all coordinated, and I do a lot of work around quantum healing as well, right? So what is the root cause of a certain symptom you're having, right? And naturopaths look
Mhm.
at that
Yep.
differently. So if somebody's having some sort of
Yes.
inflammation or joint pain or headaches, or they're having chest pain, or they have hives, or they have this rash, I'm like, okay, well, we're going to go deeper into where is this coming
Mhm.
from, right? And what's
Mhm.
beneficial about the sessions is I can see the energy of where it's coming from, whether or not somebody's consciously aware of it. Usually I just got to
Yeah.
like move that thought from the back of their mind to the forefront so then they see in their daily life and
Where?
practice how it's showing up.
Yep.
But one thing,
So
like kind
true.
of to give you a human design tip about the frustration that came from doing something unaligned was a part of the
Mm.
one line in your profile as the investigator, right? And so you are meant to go and investigate and sniff out whether something's going to work for you, right? And so when we realize, oh, I did that and it's out of alignment for me, now I know the answer. I'm not going to persist. I'm going to shut the fuck up and sit
Mhm.
down and not go back to
Mhm.
that.
Mm-mm.
Whereas
That's
people will
like, don't touch
continue
that. That's
the
hot.
don't touch it, that's hot. Exactly. Caution, right? Let me just go investigate to make sure it's still hot. It's
Yeah.
still hot. Let me back the
Yeah.
fuck away.
Yeah.
Right? Like a
Don't
lot of
touch it.
people will continue to like, is it still hot?
Mhm.
It's like the
Mhm.
fire's getting like, or like, the gas stove is getting hotter and they're just like,
Yes.
and then people wonder why they
I'm
get burned, right?
invincible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so true,
So,
and that's
yeah.
why I think that's so because you're like, yeah, it resonates, and that's exactly it. It's like and I always told my mom this, like, "Thank you for the advice, like, totally, but let me figure it out for myself." Or, like,
Yeah.
at work or with friendships or whatever, I'm always like, "Cool, thank you for the advice. I'm so glad that I have informed consent or this knowledge, whatever, but I really need to feel that to understand it." Like, the other day, I dropped a bunch of food all over myself, and everyone was trying to help me. I was like, just leave me alone. I was like, I need to learn the shame of what I did so I don't do it again. It was just kind of funny because it's like such a mild thing, but I'm like, I need to stop being a spaz. And that's how I'm going to learn from cleaning up these eggs. And it's just, it makes you feel, like you said, less crazy. Is being like, I was designed to be this way. How can I look at this as a positive and turn this around and use it as fuel? And I think a lot of people get turned up with, and this is just my opinion, turned up and wrapped around mental illness when really I just think it's misused energy and alignment to what they're doing. And if they could find a little bit more of that, I think that energy would move so that it wasn't just like trapped in the body. Is that like a interesting way of looking at it?
100%. You don't want your energy staying trapped in your body. And I talked about this a bit on my
Mhm.
stories yesterday. I don't know if you saw about how the lack of clearing out of our um, unaligned energy ends up leading to blocks in our chakras, which end up manifesting into something physical. And people
Mhm.
hate, absolutely hate realizing and understanding that they have caused the physical ailment to themselves. People
Totally.
hate that, right? So
What? And it's like, why? You can
it's
change it. Like, remove the
people
shame.
want to
I guess
blame
it's
other
ego,
people.
right?
They want
Yeah,
to
it's
blame
easier
other
to do it
people
that
for
way.
their problems, right? And so that's where the lack of accountability or seeking
Mhm.
accountability comes in is what are you going to choose? Are you going to realize that you staying in an unaligned toxic situation is festering in your body and
Mm.
your body's trying to invoke a reaction or a clearing of sorts and get your attention, right?
Mhm.
Or are you going to sit there and play victim? I have no time for
Yeah,
victimhood or
I don't.
martyrdom. And I think
Yes.
we're getting to that place of having more understanding of how it shows up and the epigenetics and the quantum um,
Yeah.
connection with physical health. But
Yes.
yeah, if we stay out of alignment and our body is continuously telling us something, it's going to show up in one way or the other. If it doesn't show up in your body, it's going to show up in your relationship or in your career, um, relationship of any sort.
Yeah.
But
I feel like it starts kind of
yeah,
like spiritually, you start to feel it, like you get low, and then all of a sudden it's like the mental health starts to drop, and then your body
yeah,
starts to drop. So it's like you are getting all these little flags as you go through time, but we're just so easy. Like, depending on who you are, where you are, for different reasons, you have all these normalized things. Like today, talking about my period, and I was like, yeah, well, I'm pretty normal. I get a little pain. She's like, that's not normal. We're not supposed to experience anything but bleeding, and it's just like, again, there's some things that we've normalized so much, what I think is so wild. So then
wow,
we just put back like everybody's anxious, everybody, oh, like, oh, I'm not feeling well, probably because I'm not eating, and then we push all those down. And I think all of that combined, like you said, it manifests into something physical where you're no longer going to be able to ignore this, because I'm going to take you down with massive illness, like dysregulation, like going to depress you, whatever. And I completely agree when I talk about like, hey, we're really powerful and like you don't have to be on medication. You can, but you don't have to. And there's other
Hmm.
things that you can do to help. People get so mad and I'm like, why the fuck are you mad? That means there's an
You don't
answer. But like you
understand.
said,
Like, you don't understand.
yeah,
And it's just like,
I do though. It's like we all have our own shit. Like you said, we all have our own soul
yeah,
contracts. Just because we've gone through different hardships doesn't mean that we haven't gone through them, right? And some people worse than others. I completely acknowledge that. But
yeah,
I feel like for the most part, if you ignore it, head in the sand, it just gets worse. And it just confronting
100%.
it oddly, as gross as it is, leads to better things. So we come to you for human design. One thing I do really want to talk to you about because I love and I've always been interested in, but again, always been like, how do I even do this? So tarot cards,
Yeah,
they're so alluring to me and I just love listening to them. And I thought that was just something that is that just something that only spiritual people, like intuitive people? I thought it was just intuitive people. And then you're like, I have on your website, like I have a course. I was like, I could get my own deck and
yeah.
pull my own
Of
cards.
course, of course, of
Can you tell me
course,
about
of
that?
course.
What does that
Yeah,
mean?
so
Of
I
course,
love
cards.
tarot.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, course.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I
Mm,
love tarot. So there's a couple of different ways to look at it. I mean, I don't need tarot to read energy. So I don't really
mm.
use tarot often in my sessions unless a client asks for it. I'm
Okay.
like, you can get the same answer. Or if I want them, if I
Okay.
just want to make sure with your guides or your higher self that,
Yeah.
or my guides, like we've hit every note,
That's it.
sure, maybe a
Yeah.
little extra message will come through the symbolism of the card.
Cool.
But my abilities are completely unlocked without the cards because I have my psychic abilities unlocked and we all have those abilities. The other side are people that read tarot that may not have as strong psychic abilities unlocked. And you can work
Mm.
towards that, right?
Cool.
So you could, yeah, grab a deck of cards and shuffle it and ask your guides what message they want to give you. It ends up being learning about what that card means and intuitively feeling
Mm.
into it, right? Like, what kind of reaction does it give you? What does it evoke in you? Um,
Mm.
like my card deck and almost every other card deck is going to have a booklet of what, what does this card mean?
It says.
My
Mm.
course is, yeah, meant for anybody that wants to join and learn about reading tarot. And then I have modules for each suit. Like there's 4 suits in tarot: wands, swords, cups, and pentacles. Typically,
Okay.
some decks will kind of
Branch
rename
out.
some of the stuff,
Mm.
right? Like, but then you'll be able to kind of tell
Make it
by
their
going
own.
through the book of like, yeah, like inspiration is actually swords, right? Like they're going to tell you. And so I always recommend starting with one of the more basic decks, like the Rider Waite, or one that has the typical suits. And so the Rider Waite is like the most popular, famous deck in the world.
Okay.
And so I use that deck in the course
Class.
to go through every
Awesome.
single card and share the meaning of that card. And then I talk about
I
what
feel a girls'
reversals
night coming.
mean. Girls night. I do like what
Yeah.
reversals mean, or like what cards mirror each other. What's the difference between a minor arcana and a major arcana? You have 22 major arcana, 50 plus minor arcana, like 56. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. And then, yeah, I do have like a booklet in there. So it really is something that you learn. Like when I was opening up my abilities, I had to learn what all the cards meant, right?
Mhm.
Like that was a
No doubt.
that was a
As I
part of
say,
my
that's you
job.
learn so much.
I
Your
learned
brain's
so
huge.
much. My brain is, yeah, out of my head at this point. Like with too
Giant
much,
sponge.
not even like smart. It's just like too much going on up there.
Just
But I had
information. Yes.
information. Yeah, like information overload. Too many signs. Too much info. Too much telepathy. Grateful for it, but yeah, it's
Of course.
something I had to learn and everybody else can learn. So
Mhm.
I broke it down in a really basic form, at least I think, or would hope, in the course for it to be digestible for someone that has zero psychic intuitive abilities to someone that does, and everyone in between.
And how would you, and I know this wasn't the question, one of the questions I had, but how would you, like, for yourself, like, how did you learn that you had that? Or how would one learn that they have intuitive abilities? Is that something that, like, you would know if you did? Like, if I'm questioning myself, how would I know? Would I have to ask that?
Mm, so I got confirmation through those couple individuals that I was talking to you about earlier. How it started
Okay.
for me was before my catalyst, and what informed
Mm.
that was me studying about intuition because I was feeling things
Mm.
intuitively, and
Yeah.
then I was questioning whether my intuition was right. I'm like, this is pretty fucking crazy because I was like going through a lot of a lot of shifts in my life and some karmic contracts, and I'm not proud of the situations maybe I put myself in, but
Okay.
I was like, why am I feeling drawn to this or that, or nothing like super bad, right?
No,
But it was
no,
like a
no.
question of integrity, and I was like, I'm being drawn to
Yeah.
this and I'm being drawn to that. And I was like with my counselor, and she actually had me question at that point, counselor. She had me questioning my intuition, and then I would get pissed off. That was me out of alignment because I'm like, my intuition's telling me something. So I'm just trying to protect you, and I was like, but I feel this strong, right?
Yeah.
Strongly. She's like, I just want to protect you, and it made sense because, like I said, like the situations that were going on were different than what I would typically involve myself in,
Mhm. Yep.
or like the sort of people that I would, surround myself with or whatever.
For myself. Yep.
It's just like
Totally.
toxic, right? And so
In
then
there.
I started to realize like intuition. Okay, like why is this happening? And I came across Abraham Hicks, and so I
Mm.
became obsessed with listening to Abraham Hicks, and then realizing what my intuition was, and then seeing that for my whole life I had been feeling those ways,
That's
and that
amazing.
was what really started to create the shift in catalyst for those abilities to become more unlocked, because I started to test it a little bit,
Yeah.
or I
Yeah.
started to see like where in my life did I feel something intuitively and did it manifest, because I had gotten some
Mhm.
confirmations of things that I had intuitively felt maybe like 5 years prior.
Yep.
I had my
That's
ex-husband,
amazing.
not Raj, like my ex-husband, come up to me about
Yep.
something, and then I had a friend come up to me about something and say you were right. And I was like,
And you're like,
ha
okay.
ha, maybe if you would have just listened to me at that moment, right? But it was
Great
like
validation.
yeah, great validation of like, oh yeah. So I was like, well,
Fuck yeah.
good luck. Good luck with this
Yep. Yep. Totally.
situation, right? But that's all comes down to experience. But you can, for me, I've always given my advice to a friend that seeks it based on the intuition of what I'm feeling, right?
Mhm.
So that was
Yeah.
always what
That's
I was
totally.
doing, and I didn't realize that, oh yeah, it's coming from a higher sense of knowing how this is going to transpire.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I was definitely born with the gifts but didn't realize it, and
No.
then started to see it more through those 3D confirmations, and then just building on that. And one other shift was listening to what I was hearing, because I thought it was ego, like the voices in my head.
Okay. Fair.
Like, this is
Yep.
ego, this is sabotage. Like, it's your anxiety, it's your OCD.
Yep.
Like, I
Yep.
remember one day I was at my apartment in Vancouver. It's probably just, yeah, the year I'd moved in. And then I just sat there and I was like, by the sink. I have a vivid memory of like, let me just listen. Let me just listen to what I'm hearing, because it's not me. I
It's
would
not
not
my
tell
voice.
I would not tell myself what I'm hearing.
Yep. And then
My
you
my
wonder, right?
mhm.
You hear about people hearing voices and stuff, and you're like, okay, should I be
Yeah.
concerned?
Yeah, and it was more of like I wasn't soothing my ego by what I was hearing.
Mm-hmm.
My guides were basically like, live through it,
Yeah.
right? Where your ego's like, destroy it.
Yeah.
Figure
Yep.
it out.
Get rid of it. Don't look
Move
at it.
something. Move
Yep.
something to make this certain
Go
for
away.
you. Yeah, where my
Yep.
guides are like, hey, you signed up for this. And I was like,
No, I
and
didn't, you liars.
so
Tell me, where's the proof? Where's the
yeah,
contract?
yeah, yeah. So
Let me see it.
that's when exactly. And that's when I realized, I'm like, okay, what they're telling me is something higher than what I want to know and what I want to accept,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I bet that felt
And what
big
I
at the time.
it did. I was like, okay, and then I just started to sit down and be like, and then enhanced my meditation abilities and
Mm.
clearing a lot of the noise, and the rest is now, I guess. Not
And
history,
one
it's
thing
like
I wanted to say
presently.
earlier too, yeah, that's fair. The energy shift that you said that you have, I feel like you still have that like massive passion and fire about you, but I feel like the fire is more peaceful, if that makes sense. Like more, you know what I mean? Where it was just like you said before, you're going, 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 and like just always want to. I don't know, I was getting that like gotta produce and like I figured out my thing and what I want to do and I'm really good at and I gotta go, 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 go. Where now I'm like, I'm definitely seeing you being like, I know I gotta go and I know I gotta do things, but I'm gonna take time for me. I'm gonna reset. I'm gonna keep, you know what I mean? I just think that you still have that fire, that energy, that firecracker, but it's like you also are respecting yourself and honoring yourself and making sure
Yeah.
you're okay first. I think that's probably
I
just a spiritual thing too at first because you're like, I want to help everybody.
100%. And what's funny about that is like I still have to coach myself about those things offline a
Oh, I can
lot.
imagine.
Like I am
That's very fair.
constantly sitting there with my guides like you're pissing me off right now.
Mhm,
You're
mhm.
absolutely destroying me on the inside. And they're like, just stay silent for 3 days. And I was like, yeah, you already know how that feels.
That's suffocating. No, don't
It's
silence
suffocating.
me.
They test me and they test me and they test me and I don't mind it. But what's really
Mhm.
interesting is how I've become more accepting of it. So that's something that has been really difficult, but it's interesting that that energy has translated over in a different way. But definitely more calm. Like that took a
Yes, yes.
lot of time and energy because a part of it was the frustration with my burnout back then.
Mhm, mhm.
I was like, I
Yep.
just need to get this all
And now
out
it does
there.
what I
I just need
mean.
to get it out of my head so I
Yeah.
can like try to relax.
Yes.
Right? It was
Yeah,
depleting. It was
yeah.
actually like debilitating. And
Yeah, and you're
so
like, the
I
faster
had
I
to
get it
make more time.
done, the faster I can chill. But
Yeah, the
that doesn't
faster the
actually
next
work that way
step,
because you'll just
the
find more.
faster
Yeah.
exactly. The faster I can relax. Did that ever happen? No, because it was just the next
No.
day I
Yeah.
had so many
Something
more
else.
things to do and so much more
Yeah,
expected of me until I
yeah.
decided like what I wanted that trajectory to look like instead.
Yeah, and what those boundaries would look like based in your new experience, new environment, your new energy. Like, you know, you got to protect your energy levels too, especially when you're working with people's all day, right? Like, just like I said, like therapists, fitness coaches, like everybody listens. Like, it's great to help people, it's great to listen, but it is sometimes taxing. And when you're an empathetic person, you care about people, you want to help. Like, I struggle always not just taking everybody else's problems on myself and like trying to fix it for them. And it's like, okay, hold on. You can be a support, but you don't need to overextend. So it's like, I got all these abilities, I want to help, but I also have to set those boundaries up. And I imagine,
Yeah.
especially having a new business, a new adventure, it's hard to do that for any small business owner or someone that's just creating a passion with their services because it's like you kind of have to be available a little bit more as you develop. So that whole thing. So now I feel like you found that flow, you understand your boundaries. Like you're saying, you know, when you're getting called to like a night shift and you maybe need to move things around. And I
Yeah.
just feel like, you know, you're
Yeah.
going through like the flow of it in just like a more maybe accepting, like you said, manner, like not pushing it out like you did years ago and now just being like, okay, what's up?
Yeah.
Let's go.
And it's like, what do I really want to work on? What do I really want to talk about? What is really fueling me and my passion? And I I think because there was just so many different styles of things going on,
Mm-hmm.
it became really difficult for me to like perhaps let go of a topic. Like right now I'm not talking much about government, and that's
Mm-hmm.
intentional because
It's wild out
it's not yeah, it's not productive for our energy. And people are very cult like when it comes to politics, and when I had like posted against Pierre, people were pissed. And like it's starting to come out in different ways, but I'm unfollowing her now, like this is the last straw. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm like,
Why can't we
whatever,
agree
right?
to
Like
just
it,
disagree though? Like why,
yeah.
like unless you're just
And
like,
I'm like, I don't,
I'm gonna kill
I'm
this
like, I just
puppy,
don't
like
I mean, I just don't care anymore. Like, I'm not gonna
yep,
vote. I'm sorry. Like, I probably
yep,
won't because
totally fair.
this shit is stupid, and I'm sick of them prying on us and running this clown show. And
Totally.
really, no one we vote for is actually going to empower us at this point because I come
Not
from
federally.
and I'm not telling people not to vote, right? Like, I'm
No, no,
coming
of
from a
course.
spiritual lens
Yes.
of the fact that we are becoming more sovereign, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to watch where we put our energy because that is a matrix and a vortex that will just continue to be the way it is, right? It's not
Yep.
going to get better because everybody that enters that space is doing so with good intention, but it's laced with so much negativity and colonialism. And
Mm-hmm.
the only way to get out of it is to detach from the power, right? Because what's interesting is when I was listening to our last episode together, I was just listening to like parts of it today when I
Oh,
was
I love
sharing on my
that.
story, and I was talking about how, what was I talking about? Now I just blanked.
Oh no, now my stoner brain is gonna blank. We were talking about the
No,
last
no,
time we
no.
talked.
No,
Huh?
no, no. I remember. I'm just trying to think of what I was saying in that clip. Ah, crap.
Government
I don't know. I
colonialism.
was talking about pro-choice and sorry, I need to turn my Discord off here. My
Oh, that's
notifications
okay.
are going off. So it was pro-vax versus anti-vax,
Mm,
and people wanting you to believe in their choice and validate
mhm,
their choice more than anything else. There was another part which will come to me, but oh, right, thank you, Spirit. I was talking about how focusing attention on the fear of the mandates coming up again
mhm.
was what we needed to avoid because it was creating more energy in that space, right? It's called, what is it, the
Yeah.
Streisand effect. When you talk about something, it
Mhm.
grows.
Yeah,
And so we were
absolutely.
talking about how, because you guys were fearful the mandates were going to come
Yep.
into effect in the fall, which they didn't, right?
Nope.
And so my primary focus was getting people's focus off of the mandates at that time, because
Yep.
the only reason I agreed with mandates at a certain point, and I didn't really
Mhm.
agree, but this is before you came on my page. The reason why I the reason why I was promoting for people to follow the mandate was to shift the energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Just
show.
do
You have
what
to
they're
go through it.
saying. Yeah, to
Yep.
shift the energy. Stop going against the grain. I
Mhm.
understand why you're going against the grain, but it's not
Yep.
productive for us.
Mm-mm.
And so at that point, like, there, it was just that transition of what I was feeling energetically. Like, the more you listen at this particular point, the faster we're going to transition out of it.
Yep.
And so then it shifted to don't focus on it at all because we'd already gotten out of it. Right. So
Mhm.
it was this weirdness. And I'm kind of feeling the same thing when it comes to politics right now, of take your focus off of them so you can
Yep.
focus more on yourself and your internal decision making. And it's not
Yeah.
that what they implement is not impactful either way.
Yep.
So it's constantly figuring out the amount of
The
power in the
balance.
matrix, right? The
Yeah,
balance,
and
exactly.
yeah, and I think it's so important because, like, for one thing, I think I regret growing up is that I never paid attention because I was like, I'm Canadian, I'm so protected, I'm so great, everything's good, and then my like where things started to crumble for me was we talked about the medical, like birth control, and just being told it's safe, but I'm having all these problems, and then being given Tylenol 3 at
Mm,
16 and no one looking at root cause. So I was kind of already starting to question the medical industry a little bit and being like, this isn't making any sense. And then the pandemic came and I started to get political because the politicians were telling me I couldn't leave my house and I couldn't go places. And I was starting to see this, like you said, this cult mentality that happens within, politics and with just the everywhere right now. Like everything is just so charged sometimes. And it's just like, I
yeah.
definitely agreed with you and that we took that away because after the pandemic, like when they started about like monkeypox or anything that comes up now, I'm like, cool, next. Like, I
Yeah,
want to be
yeah, that's
aware of
exactly
it, but
it.
like, I'm not going
Yeah.
to give it energy. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, stop making fetch happen. Like,
Exactly.
not like,
Stop making
I
fetch
don't
happen. Yeah.
want it to happen. Right. So it's like,
Yeah.
I get it because I get trapped in the fear too. And then again, it's like going back to anxiety. And is it actual anxiety or do you have trapped emotions and energy that you're not expending, and then you're just not doing it the right way and you're yelling out at people. And so I agree. Like I am going to go vote and I'm going to go look into it more. I'm not just going to take everything what I know, surface value. I'm going to do that. But I think it's more important, just me personally, local levels, because I feel like that's where you can talk to people because they are feeling whatever policies that their place, like their families are feeling it more and stuff. I think these bigger
Exactly.
federal politicians, like as much as, yeah, I'm going to use my right to vote because I just, for me, and totally respect your to not, just because we can, and I've just started getting into it the last couple of years, but I
I mean,
think the
like, I
most
don't know my
important is
decision yet.
local.
Yeah.
Totally, totally,
Yeah.
totally, but just
Yeah.
saying, like, if you
Yeah.
don't, like, totally respect, because I had years where I didn't as well, but after being unvaccinated through the pandemic, then I started being like, okay, this actually does affect me. Again, like maybe it wouldn't, because if that's the story and that's where we're
Yeah.
going and that's our timeline, then you're right. Maybe no politician is going to stop that. And I did love your series on the human design of the politicians. It actually made me, and I think I
Mm.
said to you this last episode, have somewhat sympathy for Justin Trudeau, but just understanding that a lot of people are just playing roles and they're going through their shit, and there's going to be villains. There's always going to be villains in
Yeah.
your story, my story, everybody else's story. It sucks, but putting so much energy where you're actually like, I can't even I only like reading fun comment sections now. I can't read political comment sections anymore because I'm like, this is so draining. This is so stupid.
It's yeah,
I can't do it. So it's just like, I like you said, let's heal ourselves. Let's look inwards.
yeah,
What's happening with our physical body, our spiritual health, our mental health. And then we have healers like you that offer these types of things. So so we can come to you for one-on-one coaching. Is that just for human design, or is that just like
overall,
spirituality, everything,
yeah,
life coaching?
all of that. So it's like essentially if you went to your therapist and they were psychic.
Ah, that's
So
amazing.
it's
I
like
can't
a
wait.
lot of people find it very therapeutic, and it's, seeing, okay, what's going on. Like I asked some
Mhm,
identifying questions at the beginning, mainly, what's your relationship with your family? Are you in a relationship? What's that situation? Career, if you're working outside the home, kids, and just some general goals and what that story starts to give me. Well, first of all, it's usually a narration, which I love. People are like, I'm talking too much. I'm like, nope, it's perfect because the
mhm.
first session ends up being a lot of the individual speaking
Yeah,
because they're giving me the
data
whole
collection.
background of how they are. Yeah, the data collection. And so then it starts pinging at me. The energy is like, okay, yeah, this area, that area, that area. I can start to see it of where there's like red lights, right?
Yep, yep.
Basically. And so then, because a lot of, well, on that, like a lot of people may think that the energy or the shift or the block is in one spot, but it's in another spot.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, this is actually
Just like body.
transpiring in your career because you
Yeah.
have a father wound, right? And
Mhm.
so we need to kind of work backwards and
Nailed that on
realize,
the head. Why'd you
yeah.
just attack me like that, girl? What is that about? Thanks for adding me right now. I didn't pay you for this session. What the fuck? Just kidding. I
Yeah.
did
So,
talk about that though. Like it does. Like I do have like definitely separated father, alcoholic father, like daddy issues as you
mhm,
would claim, as people would
yeah,
say. And that is something I had to really realize, that I would then search for that validation with the men that were in my authority. And at that time I was
exactly.
around
Exactly.
really really bad men, where now I'm around men that, like, my bosses just absolutely respect women so much. They love everything that we do. Like I feel so supported and loved and all of that, and I see the contrast, and I don't search for that because there's just respect now. But even then I stand up for myself and I'm in a space to do that. But it's interesting because I called myself out that, I think, in last season, was like, yeah, well, I have that weird trying to search for validation because I have daddy issues, like typical. But I didn't become a stripper, no offense strippers, like we just all do it in different ways, like,
I didn't make an OnlyFans. Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
I didn't. Yeah, no, we talk about the feet and maybe doing one for the cats or something, but we all do it in different
Me and my
ways. But
friend always talk about the feet. I was like,
like
why to
no
get
one
on the
would see
feet,
you.
man? Yeah, I'm like,
Like no
why
one
to get
would
on the
see you.
feet?
I feel like I got a
Yeah,
camera. Like, yeah,
yeah,
no one has to see
it's
my
so
face. Edit my
funny.
tattoo out. But so then,
Yeah,
okay, so
that's
that's amazing. So
exactly it.
we have coaching
So
that's one
yeah,
on one, tarot card readings. Like you could teach people to do them, but you do them as well for people, right?
yeah, so yeah, learning that would be through the course, but if people
Yep.
want a tarot reading, it can either be a pre-recorded one or it could be through the energy session, but the session is going to give you the same answers the card will give you. Some people just like to have the pre-recorded version,
Mm.
um, which is like
Go
20
back to
minutes. And then, yeah, the 60-minute call is always recorded as well, whether it's on the
cool.
individual's computer or whether it's on mine. And then I send it to you after. So yeah, it just ends up being therapeutic in the sense of like getting to the root cause of what issues are going on and unloading in a safe space, or having help through the ascension, understanding what the symptoms are, understanding what's going on with um, the shifts in life, in your circle, in um, your patience, your tolerance, your boundaries, seeing where you need to create them, seeing what's holding you back,
Mhm.
and really having actionable steps that can be taken in order to fulfill the goals. And so people that come to me are really in a space of empowering themselves, and even if scary, are willing to do the work to get to that next step, right? Because
Yeah.
it is hard to um, make decisions or impact and change in areas of your life where you have a lot of wounding.
Yes.
That's just a natural process, right? So I like to hold space for it, having been
Mhm.
through a lot of different things in my life. And of course, for me, that informs why I'm able to like practice my healing work the way I am, and now why I'm really open about what's going on in my life, because
Mhm.
it's a sense of empowerment for other individuals that go through same like similar things. And so
Yeah.
for me, like I've had to learn that a part of my purpose is going through these experiences, right? And that's also a bit like base point of my design. Um, and so I like to empathize with people as well, or give them areas in my life where what they're going through has maybe shown up, the
Yep.
steps I got to, well, the steps I went through to get to the other side of that, or what kind of transpired after, right? Because some people are
Yes.
stuck in like the, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's happening to me, which is totally natural. Um,
Yes.
but when we're in the middle of that scenario that's really difficult, or we're pivoting, then, we want to talk to somebody that's probably been through it.
Yes. Yes.
And
Or
for
at
me,
least
that was
no
why,
judgment, right?
exactly, that's why I sought out my coach, because
Mhm.
she's also a divine feminine. And at that point, it was like when my catalyst was super big and loud, and I was really stuck in the the mix of everything, and I was able to talk to her as somebody that had already been through it, right?
Mhm.
And I'm
Totally.
like, I feel crazy, and I'm living in this world, and like, she now this year it'll be 5 years that I've had her in my life. And so all of the transitions and all of the resonance and stuff is something that I really try to bring into session. And I'm always so proud of my clients, whether it's someone that's come once, or someone that's come 10
Mm.
times, or someone that's continuing to do the soul growth and the soul work.
Yeah. And just intentions, right? Too, and where they're
Hmm.
coming from. And they're wanting to get, maybe it's just one session, but it's planting the seed to come back, right? Like everyone's got different timelines that they're going to do that. And I think I'm the same way, where it's just like being honest and real about what I've been through has rippled effects so much that I just bring the most incredible people in my life, because they're like, wow, I can always come and talk to you because you're so honest about your life and your trials and tribulations that, I feel like I can come and talk to you about it. And it's just nice. It's nice to feel like you can be that person. And I think one thing I wanted to say is like, I like to say people like you are like windshield wipers, because it's like for the most
Oh,
part, I think most people like know where they're going. They're on their road, but the things just got a little bit muddy, right? And you're just coming in and cleaning up and just kind of reminding them like, hey, like take this mess
oh,
out
I
of
love
here,
that.
here's your
That's,
path, right?
yes.
That's a weird analogy,
That's
but
a
I always
nice
think of like,
symbolism. No, I love that symbolism. I love that
yeah,
symbolism.
I
Like,
just picture like
that's
a
a really
truck
good
on
way
the
of
like, yeah, like on a farm road in a bunch of mud, and all that mud splashes up when you're 4x4, and you're like, fuck, and like having such a great
yeah,
time, but maybe got a little bit lost. And it's like, oh, here, let me help you, buddy. Like, you know
yeah.
this stuff about yourself, like innately, because you're designed to, and you know that. And I'm just here to kind of remind you and take all the things that you're saying. And I think therapists and friends and coaches do that. It's like, you guys are very good at listening to what people are saying, and then kind of wrapping up in a bow that we can understand what we're saying when we can't understand it inside, or like especially people that don't have an inner dialogue, like how the fuck do y'all figure shit out? Because I'm
Right.
up in there
And
all the time, like
yeah, yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know
yeah, yeah.
everything.
I
And
know.
so
When I
it's like
learned that, I was like, what? You don't have an inner
I was like, that
dialogue?
must be so nice, because I have like 18 tabs open all the
Yeah.
time talking, but anyways,
And
and I
that
just,
also
yeah, I
leads
just
like,
think
yeah, to like intuitive stuff, right? I don't know if people that
totally.
don't have an internal dialogue are highly intuitive or not, because
Mm.
the way you get your insights is through the voices. So I
That
kind
would
of,
make total sense. And to one thing too, I
yeah, I
always
don't
think
know.
like when people get into like arguments about spirituality and religion, all this kind of stuff, I like to just remind people that a lot of the modalities are like very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
It's just expressed differently, right? Like when we're
Mm-hmm.
manifesting, like I feel like that's so close to praying. Like, so it's just like, why
It
can't that
is.
all just coexist? It's just, you know what I mean? That's how I feel. It's like you guys pray to a god, or maybe someone pays to God, but some people pray to the universe, or they have different gods. And I think that's why I always question religion a little bit, because I was like, there's got to be something more than that, because so many people are saying their God is right. And I want to respect all of that. And so I really struggled to figure out where I fit, and universal and still believing in God, like that resonated with me more. I was like, okay, in my mind, there's universe, and then there's all these like very spiritual, enlightened beings at different levels that have passed on this information. And they all come at different levels. Maybe they've been God. Some of them think that, and they turn into cult leaders, but
Yeah.
like Davis Miscaviges of the world, right? They think that they're gods, and they're wrong. But
Yeah.
again, they're not aligned. That attention isn't good. But yeah, I just think, like you said, there's different people, and that's how I kind of look at it. Like people that are super fucking enlightened and have been around, and like that's what they're here for. And then there's some people that, like you said, just aren't turned on. They've got nothing. They're baby souls. And
Yeah.
sometimes when you run up to them, I think it's good to be like, bless you and goodbye. Not in a rude
Yeah.
way, but like not going down to that level.
100%.
Be like, I'm
No.
not joining you there.
Yeah.
Bless, bye.
But you're exactly right. And that's where we have a huge issue, contrast and disparity right now. Um, Everything is the same. It's all come down to interpretation and the ways in which people want to learn it. but
Mm.
where the issue gets wrapped up, and I don't talk about this too much openly. It's like I can like I talk to Jesus a lot, you know, into the sense of like like how, not a lot, but like how do you feel about how you're being interpreted, you know? And like he's not happy about it because everything has been become man-made, right? And everything has become a new version, and there
Agreed.
will be stuff that starts to transpire that shows what the reality of it is, but
Mm.
everything was and is source energy, and then we have created, not in a wrong way,
Mm.
tools to implement that level of understanding, whether that's somebody believes in a god, or somebody believes in multiple gods, or somebody believes in source, somebody believes in the quantum, somebody believes in spirituality and manifesting. It is literally the exact same thing, and people are not ready to have that conversation because of the cult mentality, and because
Mhm.
people are too caught up in their themselves being right and putting
Mhm.
their power in an external presence, right? And coming into one with your body, your sovereignty, and realizing, understanding that God is within you, and
Mhm.
the way in which you connect with Him can be multifaceted, is just what a lot of people are not ready to accept,
No. Yep.
because they are too narrow-minded in their approach, even though what they think their approach is holy. They end up being an ego without,
Yeah.
you know, because they don't want to resonate. Like, prime example on TikTok is, oh yeah, like when some you know, cult Christians will talk about, oh, tarot, the devil, the demon is like, oh my goodness, like,
My goodness.
so you can only talk to Jesus through your man-made Bible, but not through a card and the message and symbolism they want to give you. Like, of course there's going to be negative dark tarot readers, just like there's
Of
negative
course.
dark pastors and Christians or whatever religion, right?
It's
So
not
that
to
one
a
makes me
certain
laugh, and I
person. Like, it's not a
exactly.
certain category, it's a
Hmm.
person, it's a characteristic of said individual, and the rest
Yeah,
of their labels isn't really, like, a defiant of them being a shit person, they're just a shit person.
exactly. And like I just like, so there's so much I have to hold back. Like, I don't write in the comment section, so I'm like,
Of
man, you're
course.
just gonna learn through karma, on your own
Yeah.
terms.
I don't got
But I'm
time for
like,
this shit.
yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are all lost in the sauce here. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it's one thing if it helps you, whatever
Mhm.
modality it is. It's one thing to say that it's the only way.
And
It's
that's my
another thing to
issue.
say that.
Just
That's my issue too.
exactly,
Like, I don't
exactly. It's like, you
like,
can
your way is
live,
your
but
way. Mhm.
that's good. That's your lens, that's your life, but don't tell me that I'm not like, so who gets, you get to decide, right? Like, just seems so weird. It's
Yeah,
like, so who then gets to decide? Like, you get to decide how I have my life. Do I get to decide my neighbors, or how does that work? Is there like a number system? Like, I don't
yeah,
really get that. I think as long as you're not hurting anybody, whatever modality that you hold yourself to a higher standard in, so you're showing up not being a fuck to society, I think that's like all that truly matters, is that you do have some sort of moral compass or some sort of faith or hope. I
yeah,
think that's just good for humanity to have. But I think going back to the very first, when we were talking about accountability and putting that in, and we've seen that like through the mandates and stuff, it's like putting everything up to some people put it to the government, because then if something comes down to it, it'd be like, well, the government told me to do this and I was just following what I was told, right? Like, it's like,
yeah,
okay, when do we take personal accountability? When we go into cults or like religion, it's kind of like that accountability gets put to the higher power, and then the personal accountability kind of molds away, and it's just like, okay, well, my religion says I do this, so that's how it is. And it's like, okay, but there's other people in the world that don't live like that at all, so do you not see that? And then they just won't. It's just like, no. And it's okay,
yeah.
well, that's fine. But like, to me, praying to God is very similar to manifesting. I've done both, and I feel like it's very similar, and you can almost, like, I would say, intertwine the two kind of things, right? Like,
Totally,
why can't you talk to
100%.
God as you're manifesting? Like, I feel like he'd be a good
But
person
we
to chat to
are.
at that time, right?
But we
Exactly, right?
are,
So
right? Like,
perfect.
when you're praying, the praying is
Yep.
manifesting, right? Or
Same thing.
surrendering.
Asking. Yep.
Um, but a
Being open.
huge, yeah, exactly, being open. But a huge reason that this exists is because of like colonial patriarchal programming. So this is like centuries and, longer than decades of programming that has been woven through our system, regardless of your religious upbringing, which is why the systemic vortex, as I call it in my book, is so powerful,
Yep.
because it was
Yep.
all created for suppression.
Mm. Yeah, it
right?
does. It really puts people in boxes when you put them into like certain religion because then it's like against and it's like another way to divide. I'm not saying labels are terrible, but sometimes I feel like
Yeah.
when we over label things, it really does like it's almost like then the nuance and the gray disappears. When there's so much more nuance and gray in the world, then people are, and that's why I struggle with labels like that because it's like, okay, well, you're a Christian and you have to be this, but this Christian says it's this way. And then like this, I don't even know, whatever. Even spirituality, there's different ways that people, have shamed some people of how they're doing spirituality. I'm just like, that's exhausting, you guys. Like, I feel like
Hmm.
when I see that, I'm like, are you sure? Not to judge, but like, are you sure you're healed? Because
Yeah.
I feel like, like just if they're not hurting anybody, let them pray or
Yeah.
let them manifest. It's not the devil work. My goodness.
Exactly. And what I actually woke up, like a thought I woke up with today, was the wrong people were put in charge,
Oh
right? Like
gosh,
in
yes.
terms of like this the creation of this matrix we live in. But now we're
Mm,
dismantling that, and when you dismantle
mm.
and you become more light, you also attract more shadow, and so it's persisting through it.
Yeah, isn't that funny too? It's just like, oh, good light. Oh, shit. And I think
Yeah.
that too, once you realize though that you've put yourself up to this and that I think I always love that, like, instead of why me, like, why the lesson? What am I trying to learn? Like, you obviously have your feelings. I'm not saying like push down crying because, it's like, well, you're learning a
Of
lesson,
course,
deal with it.
you
It's
gotta
like, no,
cry. Yeah.
you got to feel the emotions. And, but I think at the same time, understanding, like we said before, victimhood. It's like, yeah, you can go through stuff and you can talk through it and you can say it's shitty. But if you're perpetually being like, woe is me, like that is why your life is woe is me. And I was that person for so long. Like, why did my parents divorce? Why is my dad an alcoholic? Why is this? Why is that? Why can't I find a stable? What da 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 da? Why am I not educated? Why didn't we have any money? And I was like, wow, you literally had just as much opportunities as everybody else. Like, you need to really look into where you are in your life is directly how you're talking to yourself and how you're treating yourself. And I think that's like a place, like you said, people get really pissed off. And you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Are you treating yourself nicely? In your head, are you telling yourself you're a piece of shit? Then you're
Mm,
probably going to
yeah.
show up like a piece of, you know what I mean? Like, and self sabotage, like you said, where are you self sabotaging? And I think that's probably one of the most crucial things I think that we can get out of healers like yourself is where we're not realizing where we're actually hurting on the inside and
Yeah.
bullying ourselves.
Yeah, and
Like, I'm
projecting
a big
that
bully
and
to myself.
deflecting it. Yeah, and like that's like
Yeah.
the prime root of what creates what toxic patterns or narcissism, like I've started to talk about in my podcast, is like it stems from insecurity, it stems from a lack of boundary, it stems from a lack of self-love, right? But everybody on their
Yep.
journey has to take accountability. We all have the ability to get there. If we want to continue to
Totally.
seek that out in ways that are not beneficial for us, we're going to do that. If we choose to do the healing work and understand where the patterns stem from, then we're going to do that. And unfortunately, because we live in a 3D world, people are people have a choice, right? And
To
doing
not
the
look at
work,
it. Yeah.
yeah, to not look at it and to blame other people or to not do your healing work is a lot easier than doing it.
Yeah, and then you just like you said, come back, right? It's like, okay,
Yep,
well,
and have
I
to do
bet
it.
you,
Yeah.
and I imagine it's like a disappointed parent when you came home and been like, I got a D on my report card. Like that's what I kind of like envision. Like I set you up with all these lessons and you did 3 of them out of all the ones. Like now we're fucking having to do this again. Like what are you? So I do kind of like
Yeah.
always think about that. Like, okay, how can I show up a little bit better for my higher self here? And sometimes I'm like, go fuck yourself. I'm just gonna be a whatever I feel like
Yeah.
being right now. And that's fine too, because I
And
chose to
that's
come to
fine.
Earth so I could do this too. So, heh.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you
No,
said having the
exactly.
balance, right?
Exactly. And a part of being that 3D person is, yeah, feeling the emotions like you were saying, but releasing the emotions is really important because we're processing
Mhm,
and releasing old energy and toxins. And then a part of it
mhm.
is just allowing ourselves to feel like shit sometimes. Allow yourself to feel like shit. Like
Yeah.
you just don't want
Not
it to
every day
be
has to be
for
perfect.
too long of a period of time. Like you don't want to be sitting there for weeks feeling like shit, but if for one day you feel like
Yeah.
shit and you're mad and you're disappointed, allow yourself to be that way, surrender it, and then know,
Are you
okay,
in the
well,
luteal
I have
phase?
to, yeah, right. And then be like, yeah, I'll pick myself back up. Yeah, it's, yeah. People are like, oh, I didn't realize, like,
And
I'm
you need
angry
that.
for the 200th time, not realizing that I've just got my period.
I know. I just like want to fight the air, and I'm like, go look at my app. I'm like, damn it, get my period in a
Yeah.
couple days. That makes so much sense. I do. I like. I don't know if I sent that. Maybe I did send it to you. The kid was like, can someone tell me what the luteal phase is?
Oh,
Is that
yeah,
when
yeah,
moon
yeah,
is
yeah,
rising?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
was so confused. He's like, I'm not good at astrology. I was fucking dying. I sent it to all my spiritual friends. I was like, yo,
Oh
guys are
my
gonna
God.
love this. But it's true
Oh
though,
my
like
God.
it's
So
having
funny.
grace with yourself that you could be having a bad day because of whatever reason, but don't stay in it because staying in it will cause more dysregulation, right? And you should want to know why. If you're just having a down day, I think we're human, that happens. But if you're continually having them, then that's probably a cause to be like, yo, what's going on? Like, you humans, I don't believe, even though how crazy the world is, like some people that I know that know the most things about what's going on in the world or, have a lot of knowledge, they're actually the happiest people because they've realized that it's always been like this way and that they can choose how they're going
Yeah,
to take this information and what they're going to do with it, right? Like as shitty as it is, and absolutely advocate, absolutely activism, like, and activation too. Yeah, same. All that stuff I think is really important. But like you said, when you get so wrapped up into it, that's your only identity. That's all you know. Sometimes it can be super toxic, I think, as well. And it's like you have to kind of be like a
totally.
whole rounded person too, right? Because if you're just doing that, you're going to get drained looking at the lack of the world all the time if you're not practicing gratitude, if you're not sitting with yourself and checking in, right? Like we just keep up with the Joneses and we zone out. And I think that's why meditation and gratitude, those practices daily, even if it's 5 minutes, help bring you
Yep,
back to like the present, right? So, what would
exactly.
you say is one of your favorite things about becoming a healer? Like, is it a moment where you see someone break through? Is there a specific time, or is it just like you're just fucking stoked all the time about it?
Definitely not stoked all the time about it because I have to hold a lot of space. I have to hold a lot of space
Totally.
all
Very
the
fair.
time, and that is not something I get compensated for. And so it's
Mhm.
kind of like the energy just wants more and more of you. And so figuring out those boundaries has been a process, but finally doing that, like we talked about earlier, definitely seeing clients break through and make the change that I've been like guiding them towards for months. Like there's still a couple of clients that I'm like, man, this is the one thing that is holding you back from the thing you ask me about every
Yes.
month, right? And you still haven't done it.
Yes.
And it's just like, oh, well, these are all the limiting beliefs as to why I don't think I can do it. And they think they're making like the logical, rational decision. And so that is always interesting. But yeah, seeing them shift through, even seeing myself shift something really
Mhm.
major, I can look in the mirror and be like, holy shit, you did that. Because like
Yeah.
I'm like double air and fire. I'm a very fast paced person. I have a lot of logic as a lawyer and as a Libra. Like that's the process is something super important to me. I'm an Aquarius moon, so I'm always, just overthinking things. And so when I can see that I have totally allowed myself to be in my feminine energy and trust what my guides have told me and trust
Mhm.
that they were not going to fail me. One thing that they told me the other day is last week actually, they're like, I was manifesting something and ended up manifesting. They're like, Raminder, we're not going to embarrass you. We're not going to embarrass you. And that was so powerful. I was like,
They're
shit, you're
like,
right.
okay,
Why
thanks.
would you embarrass me?
What?
Right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, why
Yep.
would you? They're like, we're asking you to trust. We're not going to put you in a position to embarrass you.
Mhm.
And so
That's
that
so
was,
crazy.
yeah,
You're
like
like,
that was
fuck. Okay,
powerful.
fine.
Yeah, then I like to like always, talk about those things publicly as well to give just more reasonable explanations to individuals, but also seeing what I've intuitively felt and the power of, let's say, the specific collective I'm working with, whether that's
Mhm.
personally or online, and seeing how our collective energy shifts something and seeing the predictions come true, even though at one point it seems so unrealistic. That is very rewarding for me.
I
It's
was banking
very
on your
rewarding.
mandate predictions
Yeah.
all the time. Like, girl,
Yeah.
yes, we're dropping this. When's the EA coming down? Whatever. I was like, yes, I want everything you're saying and the timeline that you're saying it, please.
Yeah.
Focus
And so
in.
like seeing when that, that it all lined up within days
Mhm.
was super super crazy to see that,
Validating.
that was like,
Yeah.
yeah, validating, and that like collective consciousness was there at the point of
Yeah.
whether it was whoever's
Everyone
work
doing
it
it.
was through or whatever mindset shift it was through, right? Whoever was doing whatever, like it was
Mhm.
really cool.
It was really cool. And I think it's so important. What I love about a lot of the guests that have come on, and if we ever do talk about the pandemic, is like all the positives that came out of it. And when we always hit that, it's always a spiritual collective consciousness, being just awake to more things in different avenues. And everyone had it different ways, whether that was through the medical, like vaccine area, whether that was through the mandates and travel, maybe that was through your work and things were acting crazy, or you've seen family members, or you're watching the news and seeing what's going on live on your own Instagram that's not lining up to what the news is saying. So that kind of seems
Yes.
fishy. And I just feel like it was just like all these little seeds through the pandemic. It's like, again, like all you star seeds are just like, here's all these things, and then it just hits people at different times and grows. Some people it just bounces right out, but I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of us were okay, things aren't, and then it's like, okay, now I'm being gaslit. And if you've been abused before and gaslit, you're like, I've been here, this is feeling familiar here, and I think that to me is the biggest thing, is like I found my people because I wasn't afraid to speak up and ask questions, even though I was uneducated and I didn't know I was just like, I don't fucking care. I'm going to say how I feel because I cannot hold it
Yeah.
in. And it literally started this massive journey of meeting all these people. And I've learned so much. I feel like I have my own like education school here where every time I have a guest, I learn something new. And I just think it's so neat when you start, like you said, living into your alignment, because it starts showing you and things start becoming easy. I remember being a teenager and some things would just work out for me. And I'm like, why does stuff just work out for me? Why is these things, these opportunities just falling into my hand? And I think over time I just created these stories to beat that, because that's the natural flow of the world. And now
Yeah.
I'm trying to get back to that, like, oh, and then stuff just works out. Like I'll be like, oh, I just really want to book the podcast up until November. And like I'm booked up until November. I'm like, holy shit. Okay,
I
yeah, I
love
deserve to
that.
have that. But I didn't believe that, right? I didn't believe that I deserved that. And I was like, I can do the podcast by myself. Like, just believe that you can. Just go and do it. And time also feel like it doesn't exist when you're in alignment as well. When I'm doing this stuff
Oh, it
and we're
doesn't
vibing, I'm just like,
exist. Yeah.
holy shit, we've been talking for an hour and a half now.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, this has been crazy. It feels like 5 minutes. And so I think you
Yeah.
start to see that, and everything just connects, and then you feel more whole and, like you said, sovereign. And so where's the best place that we could find you and your resources? Like your website, Instagram,
Yeah,
TikTok?
yeah. Instagram, my website is therkh.com. So that has everything on there. On my Instagram and TikTok, I have my link tree linked. So it has all my main services, like booking a call with me, my free human design guide, getting in my membership, which is now relationship boot camp. So I'm teaching people a lot about, dismantling their own limiting beliefs when it comes to their value and worth and things like that. So that's been a lot of fun, but everything can be found on my website. If people need to contact me, that's also available on my website under the contact form. I like to think everything is really streamlined, so hopefully it is.
It is. It is. And every time you post something, it's so like aesthetically pleasing and so well
Oh,
thought
thank
out.
you.
And one thing I love about you is that we're very similar in the way that we like to kind of almost talk on all topics. Like I feel like that's one thing that like I said, I really relate to you, is like, yes, you're not maybe talking about politics right now, but you're not afraid to talk about politics. You're not afraid to talk
Yeah.
about what's going on with celebrity in Hollywood, and you're not afraid to like make jokes about the conspiracies, and then you know what I mean, what's happening locally, what's happening spiritually,
Yeah.
like. And so I love that about you, that it's just like you do, because it is all connected. So it's just beautiful that, obviously you have your niches, but I love sometimes when you just throw up the random like celebrity stuff, because sometimes when I'm podcasting, I'm like, let's just do a Hollywood episode to have some fun,
Yeah.
please. Like, just
Yeah.
let's not talk about policies or
Yeah. It's like,
conspiracies
why is
or
this
government
happening?
scandals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like,
It's
what the
fun.
fuck happened to Aaron Carter? Like, I don't believe it. No, I'm just kidding. But like,
No, totally.
it's fun to
Totally.
escape. And I think one thing too, and maybe you'll be able to agree, is that like, yes, we're in a matrix, and yes, there's lots of bad with it, but we also didn't just come here to like fight the bad. We're also supposed to enjoy life too. And I think a lot of people get caught up in just being like, well, I can't do anything because this is the matrix and I don't want to buy. And it's just like, okay, yeah, don't be a crazy consumer, but enjoy life. Like, like I love how you always drink what are those freaking things, the White Claws or whatever, right? And I
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, I love, because some people are just like, no alcohol ever, and I'm like, that's okay
Yeah.
too, respect it. I'm from an
Yeah.
alcoholic, I go through my sober months throughout the year, but I've also like, I just love, because then I feel better when I go out for a wine tasting, being like, we can still enjoy life,
Yeah,
we
like
can still have fun.
being spiritual doesn't mean that you have to cut that out. Like don't smoke weed. I hate it. Like some people like to do that,
Okay,
right? Like it just depends on like you like that, right? Like that's your thing. And it's like
love
for
it,
me, it's like
my career.
absolutely not. Yeah, like absolutely not, right? Like I like to have. I've cut
Yeah,
down on my drinking because it.
totally.
I mean, I have a really high tolerance, and so I've had
Fair.
to just cut down, consciously cut down because it's how I feel the next day with my abilities. And I'm like, "Ugh, the migraine, like even if, I have way less than my tolerance, it's like I could not even be
Mm.
buzzed, but the next day I feel it so strong because it's purging out. It's like I make those shifts, but I'm also like, I like to like do my taste test, and I like my White Claws, and like it is what it is. I'm a
Absolutely.
3D human being. Like I like my gin, I like my
Exactly.
cocktails. Like
Yeah,
I don't have to
exactly.
be vegan and cut out like that's like the opposite of alignment. Sorry, not that veganism is the opposite of alignment, but forcing yourself to do
No,
things that you don't feel aligned
yeah,
with is being out of alignment, right? Like I like, oh, you're spiritual and
yeah.
you eat meat, and I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go.
And that's what I just don't like. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
but again, who made this rules? Who decided that you were the queen of England and sorry, whatever, but you know what I'm saying? Like, and decided that you get to now like
The Queen
decide
of
what I get
England.
to do.
Yeah.
Like, well, I just, like whatever, that reptile,
No, I'm
she's gone. But
laughing. Yeah,
I just
exactly.
but it's one thing that I've noticed, like the freedom crunchy side. I've talked about this quite a bit this season. Is like there's an extreme to that as well that can lead to really toxicity. And I think
Yes.
it's the same thing. Like just because you're spiritual, just because you're healing, it doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy. So it's like when people look down on others for like, say, I like to just drink in the summer. I live in wine country. It's Kelowna. That's what
Yeah.
Kelowna does. Like it's it's supporting local people. It's so fun. Like we went on a tour and we just had the funnest time and I got drunk. And but then maybe 2 or 3 years ago I'd heard like, oh, if you get drunk you're gonna get taken over by spirits and then you're gonna be possessed. And I was like, I better not drink. And then I was like, okay, but people that I know still are having a few drinks, so maybe that's extreme. Maybe that's a little extreme. Maybe I can still
Yeah.
enjoy earth
Finding
and
your
some spirits, but
balance.
just not be in a low place. Yeah, like not being a drunk will probably suscept you to those kind of things,
That's
but
exactly it.
having fun
Exactly
with
what I
your
was gonna say.
friends, probably not. Like, girls' night's probably not gonna make you be possessed by I mean, some of them, like, some of y'all girlies get wild.
Yeah.
But
At the
for the most
beginning of
part, I
the
think
talk,
balance.
that's what we were talking about, right? Like you got to be in the right
Exactly.
crowd and in alignment and hanging out with people that
Yes.
have the lifestyle that you want to
Good
curate or
intention.
create or maintain. And I think that's
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
thing is allowing ourselves to shift out of those old timelines or wants or
Mhm,
needs or expectations or, like
mhm,
I know people from for a really long time that I don't talk to much anymore, hang out with much anymore, that still like to go out and party and club, right? And it's like for me, I like to be home at a certain time, and it's
mhm.
just like, are we meshing right now or not, right? And when we try to
Yep.
force ourselves to continue to be in that timeline or
Same.
in that space, it's not like
Mhm.
anybody is negative. It's just like you're out of
Mm-mm.
alignment with what your soul is calling you to do, and so making those adjustments with the friendships is hard.
It is so hard too because sometimes, especially when it's like that, not I'm gonna say not bad behavior, but like, for me it's just like I'd rather be at home. I'd rather my girlfriends come and hang out. Like for sure, go out for dinner, but
Hmm.
like partying, no, thank you. Like I'm gonna be. It's not that I judge anybody. It's just not for me. I'd rather have meaningful conversations and have a girls' night and play cards, or get
Yeah.
have a tarot card reading course, with Rami, or
Yeah.
go like like I'd rather just not. And well, also clubbing is not the same as when like we went clubbing, and I'm so
No.
sad for this
No.
generation because
I
I just
know.
don't think it's the same. Everyone's on their phones. It's like no one talks to each other anymore. So I'm like, even if I go out clubbing, I don't know if it's my age or the environment, but it's just not the same. So
No,
no,
it's
thank
not the
you.
same.
Unless I'm going to a
No.
concert, like no, I'm not into it. So I
Yeah.
get that, but it's like, am I out of alignment? And we can still be friends, but then it's like you don't have as much as in common anymore. And then it just like some friendships just. I like that saying where there's people for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I think
Yes.
that really like put into perspective to me that like also being a person that people come to for advice and just to be around, which is amazing. I used to be like, why are people using me and then just leaving me? And it's like, well, because you helped them with what you needed to help them with, and they no longer need that help. And that's okay. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. And
Yeah.
that really helped me. And I'm sure you probably feel that too, because people are obviously
100%.
drawn to you for the help. You help, they leave, and then you're kind of like, not what did I get out of
Now
it?
it's a
That's a
now it's a
terrible thing to
boundary,
say, but
but now it's a boundary
exactly.
because it turns
Good
into
point.
like an energy vampire situation where I'm like, book a call with me if you want to talk to me about your stuff. Like I don't actually say that, but like that's my energy about
Totally.
it because I'm like, who
Yes.
I am is, um, like what I do is now who I am.
Hmm.
There's no
Totally.
separation. And so
Mm-mm.
if you are not um, paying me for my time, if I have time, I will give it
Mhm.
to you. And I think that that's been
Of
hard for me
course.
to assert because then I feel like a bad friend. And I'm like, no, you're not a bad friend because there's so much work that I do intangibly, like not sleeping this whole week, right? Like
Mhm.
that's exhausting for me. And then
Yes.
still trying to maintain everything. Like like that's why I was like, okay, I'm just gonna be more transparent about how this impacts me. And that's every single
Hmm.
healer or starseed that does like the work that I do,
Totally.
because we're just shifting the collective. And I'm like, if I have clients that have paid me that are helping me shift them, it's like I will give to you then when I have the capacity. And creating that boundary was difficult, and also
Oh,
kind of coming to the point of the reason or season, right? Rhythm or rhyme,
yep.
whatever. It's like, what are your expectations of the people in your life? Like, A, are they healthy
Mhm.
expectations? And B, are you expecting something from somebody that can't give you that? Like, some
Mhm.
friends are going to be there
Mhm.
for a specific purpose or time, or it's the person that you don't feel awkward talking to 6 months down the road, right? Compared to the next
Yes.
person that you're going to be like, where have you been for 6 months, right? Um, just kind of assessing like, what is your expectation, and is it healthy, and are you
Mhm.
wanting the goalie to play defense, like what are
Yeah.
we
False
expect.
silly
Yeah,
expectations. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And that's where being
And
honest is too, right? And if you can't be honest in any relationship, I think that's where stories just get brought up through our own insecurities that aren't real. And then it's like, oh, you don't talk to that person because you made up something in your head. And it's like, I just don't like dealing with it anymore. Just cut through it. But one point I want to say, and this is not you saying this is me saying this. If you're friends with someone, please pay them full price and please pay for their
mhm,
services and don't ask for discounts and don't ask for things for free. That's why I made sure I was very careful when I asked you my question. It wasn't like, hey, can you give me the answer? It's like, hey, do you know someone that might potentially have this? And I was doing that so not to
right,
be like, I'm not expecting you to answer that for me because we're friends and I would never expect you to just give me that answer. But I was like, do you know someone? And then in my mind, it's like, and if that called to you to respond because you were curious or you were okay to give me that advice in that moment, then that left that open for you too. But with that no expectation, would I think you just give me free advice, even though obviously
yeah,
I'll be very supporting and helpful. But you know what I mean? I think it's just when I'm terrible. This is why I'm not good at photography business because I just give all my friends free photography and totally fine.
yeah,
I do it for art now, but it's just I would be like, that's what friends are. And it's like, no, friends pay full price. Friends are there to do that. You want to see you succeed. So like not even from you and
that's
boundaries. I just don't
exactly
think we
it.
should do that to our friends. That's just how I feel about it.
And I've just come to the point where it's like, if a friend or family member or somebody is engaging with you, because I always know
Mhm.
when somebody's coming to me and they're inching towards wanting that, and I used to do
Yeah.
it.
Hmm.
um I don't really work with a lot of friends and family anymore because of that reason, and I don't give my phone number out to clients. Like, people ask to meet up with me for
Smart.
coffee, people ask to have phone conversations with me. I'm like, no, you got to book a call. Like, I can't have my number publicly out there because it's already
Mm-mm.
a lot of people messaging me, friends and family wise, like wanting to seek that
Yeah.
guidance, right? And like I said, like, what I do is now who I am. And so it has been a difficult boundary to enforce, because before I used to just do it and it wasn't my job, and I didn't realize how much of a toll it was taking on me. And
Yeah.
now I'm like, why would your friend not want to support your small business, right? Or do we have a
Yes,
barter system? Is there a
exactly.
trade-off,
Is there an energy
right?
exchange? Yeah, that was huge.
Yeah,
I used
like
to be like,
for
get my hair done for
yeah,
photos. It's like, great. Fuck
that was
yeah. Like,
exactly
that's
it.
great.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like I have a friend
And
of
those are
mine who
good.
does my photos, and that
Mhm.
then I promote her, right? Or I'll
Exactly.
style the
Absolutely.
shoot, and or she wants something else for her portfolio, and I'm like, sure, great.
Hmm.
And I'm
Yes,
always
like
tagging her, like,
TFP stuff.
yep,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
circulating that,
Yeah.
but
And like
it's
with my girlfriends. Yeah. With my
different.
girlfriends just go and do it for fun, and then they get photos that they can use for their business. I get an energy like an artistic energy flow that isn't like podcasting is definitely my channel for sure. But
Yeah.
when it comes to like creating art, this is just a different form of art. So photo shoots like get that creative juice flowing and just a different side of it. And so I don't charge my girlfriends because it's like we pick outfits, we go have fun, we pick some places. I edit when I have time. There's no pressure, and it's all just fun, right? And that's a whole different thing that if it was my business and I was trying, I would hope that my friends would do that. But sometimes, I get it. Times are tough, but I just think that that's super respectful to just at least not assume that they're going to do that for free. Or like you said, when you are that
Hmm.
service in that business, like please just also have that respect, right? Like, and I will say not you, but I know some life coaches do that I've stopped being friends with because they would like almost use me as as a like testing subject, like ask me as we're being friends, it would be like kind of like,
Like
but
a
why do you feel
control.
that way? And it was like, that's helpful, but kind of, yeah, I was just like, I didn't hire you
Yeah,
to be my
no.
life coach right now. I just want to talk
No,
to you like
no,
a friend. Like, no offense.
exactly.
Like, thank you.
Yeah, like,
But
are you
like
venting
there's
or do you
another
want
way
advice?
too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Are
Yeah,
you venting or
exactly.
you
Like,
want advice? Yeah,
be
no, no,
careful. Yeah, and that's
no,
I think
no.
that's like a big communication piece with spouses too, like just to randomly
Totally.
put in there is like when I remember me and Grant, he'd always try to fix stuff, and then I get pissed off. I'm like, stop trying to fucking fix my work problem. Like, you can't fix it. And he's like, well, I don't know. I'm a man. Like, I don't know what else to do. I'm just trying to fix it.
I'm
So now
solution
it's like when I'm
oriented.
in
Yeah.
exactly. And so now in those moments,
Yeah,
he'll be like, what do you need from me? Do you need support? Do you need me just to
exactly.
listen? Do you need a hug? Do you need solutions? And I think because then I was like, I don't even know every time what I want, but I'll know in the moment. So just ask those questions. I won't rip your face off. But it's
Yeah.
all working through it together, especially in the luteal phase. No, I'm just kidding. But um, is there, so this is just amazing. I'm really excited because I know for myself, a couple years ago I wasn't really ready to like jump into services with you, but I'm definitely feeling like an alignment there, especially because I'm working through my hormones and all that today with Dr. Bean with the naturopath. And I said to her,
Yeah.
I'm going to be doing spiritual work as well because I know that a lot of my infertility stuff, and I'm not searching to fix my fertility, I'm just trying to balance my hormones. But I know that
Okay.
my fertility stuff isn't just going to stem from you fixing my hormones. There's a spiritual side of that, and I know that
Yeah.
because Raminder shares about all those kind of things. So I know that I can't just put that into you. But I do need to fix my hormones just for my physical health and just to get that
Oh, I'm
balanced. But
excited.
yeah, yeah, it's just super interesting. But I was just saying to her too, like, I'm ready to start facing some of these things. And reaching out to you the other day was my first step of being like, this is a demon I've been fighting for 10 years and I need to face.
Right.
Like, please, like, what are the options to do this? And now I feel so equipped, even though I haven't booked it yet, because there's a whole other thing I'll tell you after. But
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
it's just now I feel very excited and like empowered to learn this stuff and not afraid to because I don't have shame. It's just like today with my hormones, I didn't have shame with her. I was like, just tell her honestly about everything. They're here to help. And I think that's my biggest advice on this journey, whether
Exactly.
that's healing or physical. Let go of the shame and go to these coaches and just talk to them because you've seen it all. You already know before they talk for the most part what they're going to say anyway. So they hold it back or not, you know. So
Yeah, yeah.
just
I'm like, this
be
is a safe
real. Be real,
space.
babe.
Like, yeah, it's like there's nothing that you could say to me that is going to make me judge you.
Exactly. Yeah,
I've
there's
heard
just
some
this
pretty
almost
crazy
like I want
stuff.
to know.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, and I feel like you
yeah, I
want
want
to
to
know.
know.
You want to help
Yeah,
people. I want to, and if you hold stuff, it's kind of like a fitness coach too. Like if you're not fully telling them all the time everything that like the snacks that you're eating and they can't figure out why, like you're doing a disservice to yourself and your coach too, right? So I feel like you just
hmm,
have to let that shame go and be like, I ate the fucking Oreo box, okay? It
yeah,
happened. But it's not
yeah.
linear. Growth is not,
It's
healing
not
is not just this. It's very much like this and it's always going to be like this. So stop being upset about it. Just kidding. That's easier
totally.
said than
Yeah, no, like I have
this was an
clients that like
amazing
I
talk,
told
Raminder.
them
I
not,
love
yeah,
this so
not
much.
to, yeah, it's like I tell clients, I loved it too. It's like I tell clients not to do things all the time, and they go and do it, and they're like, oh, but they come tell me, and I'm like, I'm not mad at you. Like, you already know what I'm
No.
thinking,
And
and
how
you've been with
long?
me long enough,
Yeah.
but like that's fine. Like, I don't want to hear
But at
about
the
it,
same
but I'll
time, it's a
acknowledge
good
it.
check. Yeah. Exactly. And it's just a good way to be accountable to someone else, to yourself. And it's just like, it's your life. You get to choose, but like you get to also choose your results. And I'll give you the tools, I'll give you the guidance, but you have to do this for yourself. And sure, you can come with me with your tail between your legs. That's fine because we all do
Yeah,
it, but it's your journey. And as much as you keep holding yourself back, like you said, the longer this journey is going to be, but that's to each and every one. There's not a timeline that you have to have stuff done. I think just as long as you try to progress in some area.
exactly,
And sometimes it's more than others. Sometimes it's career,
exactly.
sometimes it's family, sometimes it's yourself, right? But this has been amazing. I appreciate you so much. Is
This
there
was
any
great.
other advice like for anybody that wants to just kind of get started? Obviously come in to see you, but let's just say finances aren't there. Obviously we come watch your Instagram, we go to all the free resources, but where's a good place
Yeah,
to start tapping into your spirituality and healing, do you think?
yeah, like well, people can listen to my podcast or look up things on like I have a YouTube, but in general, any individual that you start to resonate with or diving into your intuition, you can read my book. It's $20, or you go on Kindle. Like there are so many resources that are free or inexpensive that you can start with, whether that's with me or somebody else. And I think just owning the fact that you want to be on the journey of your self discovery and your healing is a great transition, and getting there, allowing that, just embracing that,
Being open.
embodying that energy. And you're going to have ups and downs, ebbs and flows. And even as a healer, I still have those moments. And so it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be 100%. It's just committing to the fact that you want to do the thing and moving forward with it.
Yeah. And it's like a self-love, right? Like caring enough
Hmm.
to look inside to see what's going on instead of being like, I hate you, you don't deserve it. You absolutely do deserve it. And the only way to do that is to look inside and self-love. It sucks because we all like it sucks because we're so used to self-sabotaging, but I don't think that's how humans were created and it's supposed to be. But like you said, all these systems came up and like keeping up with the Joneses is such a thing and it's so hard on so many different levels. So I think you just need to compare yourself to who you were yesterday or even who you were 5, 10 years ago. Like that's what I always do when I feel like I'm not progressing. I'm like, okay, girl, but hold up. How would you have reacted 5 years ago? How would you have reacted 10 years ago? Like, maybe you're
Exactly.
not as far as
See
you
your
want to
growth.
be, but yeah, and be excited.
Mhm.
And like you said, don't give in to the fear of and the negative stories that are telling you you don't deserve it and your self-sabotage bullshit. And if you don't know what any of those things are, then again, you can go get your human design read and start that
Mhm.
journey of understanding because it did. As soon as I pulled it, whether you know it or not, just reading the high level things from your guide was like, okay, like I said, that frustration. And then I think it was like when I'm on theme, sorry, I don't know the titles, was satisfaction.
Yeah.
And
Your
so just even
self
those
theme is
words, I'm like,
satisfaction. Mhm.
yeah. And I was like, yes, like this is me. And so it's just like, then when those situations come up, you can assess things better. You can react different. You can operate different. And it's just super empowering. So I just, again, thank you for being someone that empowers all of us, that we don't have to live
Oh,
in
thank you.
dysregulation and sadness and depression. And I know that's a lot for you. And I know you don't always get thanks for it. And I know there's lots of projection
Mhm.
out there, but I hope you know that there's a lot of us that do appreciate it and hope that we cheer loud enough for you to at
I
least balance
appreciate
out the
you.
little bit
Thank
of the
you.
crazy. But it's
I
not personal,
appreciate
right?
you. No, I know it's
Of
not.
course.
I appreciate
But it's
you
so
a
hard
lot. I
not to
sincerely
though,
do.
because it's like, yeah, because you're just like you're
Yeah.
such a good person and you want, and so it's like when your intentions are that, it's really hard to sometimes face the people that just don't get it. But sometimes
Yeah.
I just leave them where they're at. I'm like, I have good intentions, and if you don't feel that, then that's you, and I'm sorry, but I'm not going to sit here and
Exactly.
beat myself up over it. Like, because I
Exactly.
know there's a fan that you have your stands and then you have your haters, no matter what. Like,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
don't put as much energy here. Go to the people that are supporting you in all certain ways. And like, that's why I just was so excited. I seen you and I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to ask her to come back on the show. It just, I don't know why I hadn't. It was just like, just that moment, just that real moment of you being like, hey guys, this is where it was the last couple of like little bit. And I was like, this woman, like, I appreciate your honesty. Obviously, that's the whole
Yeah.
thing of my created the podcast, but it really does inspire people. So please keep being yourself
Oh,
because
thank you.
I just know we wouldn't be who we are. So keep doing it. Fuck everyone else. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
But kind of
No,
really. But yeah, guys, I appreciate you. Thanks for
I
coming on.
appreciate you. Thank
Makes
you for having me again.
of course. And guys, make sure to go follow. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. There's like, girl, you're just nailing everything. It's like anytime I just need to escape, I'm like, haha, there's a story for me to catch up on. And again, in all
Yeah.
different things. So it's a bit amazing. So I was like, podcast, YouTube, Instagram, like TikTok. I haven't gone following you on
Yeah.
TikTok because I'm new there, but I just, yeah, keep pumping it out, keep changing the world. And I can't wait for our personal sessions. And yeah,
Thanks,
thanks again.
Brandy.
And
Me too.
until
I
next
can't
time, guys,
wait. Bye.
bye. Thank you guys so much for the support. I cannot thank you enough for being here. If you like this episode and you want to hear more, please give me a follow at the Be Real Babe podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, and Pinterest. You can also find me on Facebook at the Be Real Collective. Until next time, guys, bye.